Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little reckless here, stepping straight into the past. Not a movie version, not a sanitized museum exhibit, but the real, living, breathing, coughing, stinking Middle Ages. Picture this. Your eyes blink open to a dim flicker of light, smoke curling above you from a half-dead fire in the corner. The air tastes of ash and damp hay. Outside, a rooster is losing its mind, crowing with an enthusiasm that feels almost personal. You shift, and something scratches against your neck, a straw mattress, lumpy and alive in ways you wish it weren't. Congratulations, you've made it to medieval morning, and you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up, or at least attempt to. The ceiling is low enough that you can count each soot-stained beam above you. And there's the faintest drip of water from somewhere near the wall. That rhythmic plink-plink tells you there's a leak in the thatch. And judging by the chill that hangs in the room, it's been raining for a while. You rub your eyes, but your fingers come away gritty dust. Maybe soot, maybe both. In the corner, a small hearth struggles to stay alive, its embers glowing weakly like tired eyes. There's movement beside you, a thin cat. Half feral has decided that your blanket smells interesting. It stretches, yawns, and pads across your chest before vanishing through a crack in the door. You pull the blanket tighter, but it's a poor excuse for warmth, woven from rough wool, full of holes, smelling faintly of sheep and smoke. Then, there's the smell, a bouquet of wood ash, wet straw, and something else. Something you can't quite name until you realize, oh, right, that's the chamber pot under the bed. You look down, it's full. Suddenly, the idea of sleeping in isn't so appealing anymore. You stand, but your feet immediately regret it. The floor is cold, damp earth, packed hard beneath a thin scattering of rushes. Those rushes, meant to freshen the air, are months overdue for replacement. You shuffle toward the small table, your breath misting in the cold. On it sits last night's candle, half melted and drowned in its own wax, beside a wooden bowl crusted with what might once have been porridge. You poke it, and it doesn't move. The first sound beyond your little room is a low murmur, voices outside, the distant bleat of a goat, and the rhythmic thump of a handmill grinding grain. Someone's already awake. The medieval world doesn't believe in sleeping in. You push open the door, and the morning rush hits you like a wall. Smoke curls from a dozen chimneys, chickens peck at frozen mud, and villagers in wool tunics trudge past, carrying buckets, bundles, and occasionally, babies. No one looks particularly cheerful. The sun hasn't even cleared the trees yet. But already life is moving. It's one of those moments where the romance of history evaporates. You're not in a fairy tale. You're in a damp, cold reality where comfort is a luxury and hygiene is a rumor. Historians still argue whether medieval people were truly as filthy as legend claims. But right now, surrounded by mud, soot, and the unmistakable aroma of livestock, you're inclined to believe the rumors. A woman nearby dumps a bucket of waste into the street. It splashes, and a pig immediately trots over to investigate. You sidestep instinctively, but not fast enough. Your shoes, if you can call them that, are now decorated with history. You start walking, trying to take it all in. The houses are close together, made of timber frames and daubed with a mixture of clay, straw, and manure. Smoke seeps through cracks instead of chimneys. Children dart between the legs of adults, barefoot, Despite the cold, somewhere, a blacksmith hammers iron, each clang echoing like a heartbeat. You realize there's no privacy here. Every sound, every cough, every laugh filters through the thin walls. If your neighbor sneezes, you hear it. If their goat sneezes, you hear that too. Life is communal, loud, and unrelenting. You wander toward the edge of the village, passing a well where a few women are gossiping. You can't make out every word, but you catch enough to understand that rumor travels faster than the wind. Someone's been caught stealing turnips. Someone else's cow won't milk. The reeve, basically, the local tax enforcers, in a bad mood again. The social hierarchy here is rigid, and everyone knows exactly where they stand. You don't, and that's a problem, because in this world, a stranger is suspicious. Your clothes are weird, your speech is strange, and when you forget to bow or call someone my lord, eyebrows rise. If you're lucky, they assume you're a harmless fool. If not, well, you might not want to find out what medieval justice looks like. A boy tugs at your sleeve and offers a handful of berries. You smile, but hesitate. He grins, missing 3 teeth, and pops one into his mouth to show they're safe. They're not. They're nightshade berries. You thank him politely and move along. As you walk, the smell of baking bread cuts through the morning air. Salvation. You follow your nose to a small bakehouse where loaves are cooling on wooden boards. You reach out, but the baker, a thick-armed woman with flour on her cheeks, slaps your hand away with a ladle. Pay or go, she says, and you realize you have nothing to pay with. No coins, no trade, no favor owed. In the medieval economy, that makes you invisibly, or worse, expendable. You trudge away, stomach growling, and notice how the cold creeps into everything. It's not just the air, it's the kind of cold that settles in your bones. People move briskly, not because they're busy, but because standing still means freezing. Down by the stream, a group of women are washing clothes, beating them against stones. The water is nearly frozen, but their hands move as if by instinct. They chat and laugh, gossip flowing as freely as the current. You can't help but admire them. In a time when survival is the main goal, humor is rebellion. One woman looks up and waves, then offers a warning: don't drink downstream of the tannery. You file that away for later and then realize, with mild horror, that you've already had a sip. That, in a nutshell, is medieval life. Every day is a negotiation with discomfort. Every sip of water could be a gamble. Every scratch could turn septic. You're reminded of a quirky historical tidbit. Medieval people often drank small, Isla-weak beer, not because they loved the taste, but because boiling it killed bacteria. A pint at breakfast was an indulgence. It was survival. As the sun climbs higher, you hear bells in the distance. Church bells. Everyone pauses, some bowing their heads, others just listening. The sound is solemn, grounding. Faith isn't a Sunday thing here, it's the air people breathe. Every event, from birth to plague, is framed by it. Even you, an outsider, feel its weight. You wander toward the church, a squat stone building with a crooked wooden door. Inside, it's dark and cool, the air thick with candle smoke. You step softly, the only sound your own heartbeat. A priest in worn robes murmurs Latin you can't understand. A few villagers kneel, heads bowed, lips moving silently. There's something oddly peaceful here, like the chaos outside can't follow you in. But even holiness has its limits. You notice the floor dirt, the walls, the candles sputtering from drafts. Religion offers comfort, but not warmth. Still, you can't help but respect how central it is to their lives. Historians still debate whether medieval faith was blind devotion or a desperate need for meaning in hardship. maybe it's both. When you leave the church, the light feels too bright, the noise too loud, you're hungry, tired, and vaguely itchy. You glance back at the small village that's now your entire world and realize something unsettling. This is just one morning, it's only been a few hours, and already you're fantasizing about antibiotics, deodorant, and coffee, especially coffee. Without it, the world feels slightly crueler, like it's holding back your ability to function. As you trudge back toward your hovel, your foot catches on a rock, and you stumble. No one helps. Not out of cruelty, they're just too busy surviving their own mornings. You brush off your tunic, noticing that it's somehow heavier now, soaked from the mist. In the distance, the bell tolls again, calling people to the fields. Work begins. You realize your morning hasn't even really started yet. The medieval day is long. The sun dictates everything. You'll labor until it sets, eat what you can, and pray you're not too sore to sleep. It's a rhythm older than memory, relentless and raw. And yet, as you look around, the smoke curling from chimneys, the laughter of children chasing geese, the sheer persistence of life, you feel a flicker of admiration. Somehow, they did this every day. They endured. Still, you can't shake the thought. You wouldn't last a day here. Not really. Not with your soft hands, your modern expectations, your need for screens and snacks. But that's okay. Tonight, you only have to last one story. You wake again to the same rooster, louder, closer, and significantly angrier. The sun hasn't even cleared the horizon, and already the world feels like it's conspiring to drag you out of bed. Your body aches from yesterday's short stroll, your shoulders complain, and your back feels like it's been personally cursed by a medieval mattress. You open your eyes, and for a fleeting second, you hope it was all a dream. Nope, you're still here. Same straw, same smell, same faint scratching sound that tells you a rat has claimed tenancy beneath your floorboards. Welcome to the morning misery of the Middle Ages. There's a saying, modern people like to throw around, they were tougher back then. You're beginning to understand that, in this world, comfort is a fantasy, and every small task feels like a battle against nature itself. You reach for your shoes, but calling them shoes feels generous. They're leather technically, but closer to rigid slabs, stitched into foot-shaped traps. You slide them on and immediately regret the decision. The room's still dim. The only light seeps through a crooked wooden shutter, slicing across the smoky air like a blade. The fire's gone out, leaving behind a heap of grey ash. You can see your breath as you move, every exhale a ghostly puff, and then flea bite. You slap your arm, then another spot on your neck. Medieval mornings come with souvenirs, and they're alive. You scratch, but it doesn't help. The itch feels deep, ancient. Everyone here has fleas. Even kings weren't spared. There's a record from a French court chronicler complaining about noblemen itching at all hours as though chased by invisible armies. You can relate. You shuffle toward the basin in the corner, a wooden bowl, half filled with icy water from last night. You stare at it, your reflection trembling on the surface, and brace yourself. You dip your hands in. The shock is immediate and brutal. The water is freezing, biting your skin like tiny knives. You splash your face anyway, gasping like you've just been reborn through misery. There's no soap, of course. At best, there's a sliver of lye-based something nearby, rough enough to double as sandpaper. You give it a cautious sniff. It smells like ashes and regret. That's your morning wash done. Now you need to get dressed. The wool tunic you hung over the stool hasn't dried. It's still damp from yesterday's mist. You pull it on anyway, grimacing as the cold fabric clings to your skin. then the outer layer coarser, heavier, and just as itchy. Medieval fabric technology, you realize, was less comfort and more mild self-punishment. You try to comb your hair with a carved wooden comb, but the teeth catch instantly. You wince and remember something you heard once. People in this era used animal fat as a kind of styling product. You glance around, decide against it, and settle for historically accurate bedhead. The smell of smoke wafts in through the door, mingling with something bread-like. Maybe, you think optimistically, breakfast. You step outside and immediately regret breathing. The entire village seems wrapped in a fog of wood smoke, manure, and the faint metallic tang of the blacksmith's forge. Your eyes water, but the villagers go about their business, unbothered. You're the only one coughing like a tourist. Your stomach growls up. Reminder that medieval dining schedules don't align with modern appetites. There's no cereal, no coffee, no toast. Breakfast here, if it exists, is usually something left over. And if you're lucky, that something hasn't molded overnight. You wander toward the communal oven, where a small crowd has gathered. Bread is life here, its currency, comfort, and sustenance, rolled into one dense, slightly burnt package. The baker eyes you suspiciously, but when she sees your empty hands, she softens. Maybe she mistakes your dazed expression for devotion. She offers a chunk of bread, dark, coarse, and hard enough to double as a weapon. You thank her, take a bite, and instantly chip your pride. It's sour, gritty, and full of unidentifiable crunch. You chew bravely, realizing that medieval flour often contained ground husks and bits of stone. Teeth, in this era, didn't stand a chance. Historians still argue whether people's diets destroyed their teeth, or if medieval dentistry, or lack thereof, just sped things along. Either way, you make a mental note to floss extra tonight, if floss existed. For a drink, there's ale, not the foamy pub kind you're imagining, but a cloudy, lukewarm brew that tastes faintly of old bread and river water. Everyone drinks it, even children. Water, as you learned the hard way, can't be trusted. The small ale, at least, has the decency to be mildly sterile. You sip, it's awful. You sip again. It's still awful, but now it's slightly comforting. The village is alive, now hammering, sweeping, shouting. You watch as a woman dumps a bucket of slop into the street, and a pig trots up to investigate. Chickens scatter. Children chase them, and a man yells something about taxes that sounds universal in any century. You start walking, stretching your legs. Every path seems muddy, every surface uneven. You dodge puddles, fail once, and end up with one shoe full of medieval authenticity down near the edge of the village. You spot a wooden trough where people are washing their hands before work. You join them, but they stare. Your accent gives you away. You mumble something about being from another shire, and they nod politely, which feels like medieval four-wheel gossip about you later. The man next to you grins, showing a single heroic tooth. You're new, he says. Pray you last till sundown. You laugh weakly, unsure whether he's joking. His face says he's not. You wander further, observing the rhythm of the place. Women bend over spinning wheels, turning wool into thread. Men haul buckets, sharpen tools, and argue about oxen. Children chase hoops through the mud. The village functions like an enormous, slightly chaotic machine. Every person has a role, and every role is vital. There's no such thing as unemployment, only survival. And you, with your soft hands and questionable cardio, don't seem particularly employable. A bell clangs from the church again, marking mid-morning. The sound carries across the fields. People pause, make small crosses on their chests, and go back to work. Religion isn't just belief. Here it's timekeeping, law, and structure. Without it, chaos would win. You spot a man in a brown robe standing near the church steps, a monk, maybe. He's feeding scraps of bread to pigeons. You approach, curious. He looks up, smiles faintly, and says, "Cold morning, traveler." His voice is gentle, his Latin accent thick. You nod. He offers you another piece of bread, smaller, but softer this time. "God provides," he says simply. You thank him, feeling oddly touched. In this world of grime and hardship, kindness hits different. The monk tells you that the Lord's reeve will come today to inspect the tithes, the taxes owed in grain, wool, or labor. You ask what happens if someone can't pay. He shrugs. Then they pray harder. You can't tell if it's a joke. As the morning drags on, you notice how your body protests. The cold bites at your fingers, your shoulders ache from shivering, and your stomach still feels half empty despite the bread and ale. You can't imagine how people do this day after day, but they do. They have no choice. In the distance, you see the fields, muddy, endless, and waiting. That's where most of the villagers are heading now, tools slung over their shoulders. You follow out of curiosity. The air smells fresher away from the hearth smoke, but it's still heavy with damp earth. You watch as they begin their work. There's no machinery, no shortcuts, just muscle, rhythm, and endurance. Men plow behind oxen, women sow seeds, children scatter to chase crows away. Every movement has purpose. You're struck by how cooperative it all seems. Community built on necessity, not choice. A woman beside you hands you a spade. "You can dig," she says, "if you're staying." You grip it, test the weight. It's rough, heavy, and your hands aren't ready for it. You plunge it into the soil. The mud resists. You press harder. The spade sinks an inch, maybe two. She laughs softly. You'll toughen. You're not so sure. By midday, your back screams, your palms burn, and your stomach growls. Sweat trickles down your temples despite the chill. You glance around. No one else is slowing. Even the old men work steadily, their faces calm, their hands calloused from decades of this. You realize they're built differently. They have to be. When a small horn sounds from the village, everyone stops. Lunch fit can be called that. You sit on a rock, panting. A boy offers you a wooden bowl filled with potager, thick stew of barley leeks, and maybe a hint of something meaty. It's lukewarm, lumpy, and easily the best thing you've tasted since arriving. You sip it slowly, watching the steam curl up into the grey air. Around you, people chat quietly, laugh even. Jokes about the weather, about the reeve's temper, about how Brother Matthew snores louder than thunder. You smile. Humor survives everything. Apparently even SERFDOM. Then someone starts telling a story about last winter, when wolves came close to the village. The tone shifts, fear still lingers in the memory. You glance toward the woods beyond the fields, dark and endless. You can almost imagine eyes watching from the shadows. The medieval night isn't kind to the unprepared. After the meal, everyone returns to work. You, mercifully, are excused by the amused farmer who lent you the spade. "Best you don't ruin my tools," he says, with a grin. You thank him and limp back toward the village. The walk back feels longer. The mud clings to your boots, each step heavier. Your fingers are numb, your breath fogs, but there's something strangely grounding about it. The simplicity, the rhythm. You begin to see how people found peace in routine. Even misery becomes manageable when it's predictable. You pass by a cottage where a woman is combing her daughter's hair. The little girl yelps as the comb catches, and the mother chuckles softly. For a moment, it's almost tender. universal. Families then loved, scolded, and cared the same way they do now. Time changes tools, not hearts. By late afternoon, the sun finally breaks through the clouds, spilling a pale light across the village. The roofs glisten with moisture, the smoke rises golden, and the sound of distant bells hums like a heartbeat. For a brief moment, it's beautiful. Then you sneeze, loudly. Everyone turns to look. You wave awkwardly, realizing that in a world without antibiotics, sneezing is the medieval equivalent of a red flag. Someone mutters a prayer. You assure them you're fine, but they're already giving you space. You suddenly remember how quickly illness spreads here. How a simple cold can spiral into something far worse. By the time the sun dips low, you're done. Every bone aches. Every muscle complains. You trudge back to your hut, feet heavy, hands raw. You collapse onto the straw bed, which somehow feels less awful than it did this morning. Through the cracks in the wall, you can see the sunset deep orange fading into grey. You hear laughter outside, the crackle of fires, the hum of simple songs. It's the sound of survival, of people who've known this life all their days and still find reason to smile. You pull the blanket around your shoulders and stare at the flickering shadows. Maybe, you think, it's not all misery. Maybe it's resilience. Maybe it's humanity stripped bare raw, flawed, and stubbornly alive. Still, as the fleas resume their midnight feast, one thought keeps circling in your tired mind. You wouldn't last a week here, but somehow, tonight, you've lasted another day. The rooster again. You swear this bird has a personal vendetta. Its crow cuts through your fragile morning peace like a battle horn from a war you didn't sign up for. You crack open one eye. The same wooden ceiling greets you. Those same soot-black beams looking down like judgmental eyebrows. Another medieval morning. Another round of survival, dash by dash, stubbornness. You stretch. But your joints protest every movement, reminds you that mattresses stuffed with straw and mystery lumps don't exactly support good posture. You smell yourself and pause. Let's just say deodorant hasn't been invented yet, and it's showing. Medieval hygiene might not kill you outright, but it's working on it slowly. One pungent day at a time. The air feels thicker today, heavy with the scent of smoke and wet wool. Your tunic, still not fully dry from yesterday's labor, clings to you like a damp apology. You pull it tighter, but it doesn't help. When you glance toward the corner, you notice a small heap of fabric and realize that you've been given new clothes. New in the sense that someone probably died in them recently. You lift the bundle and shake it out. It's another wool tunic, coarser than the first, dyed a patchy brown, a belt made of twisted rope, a hood that smells faintly of tallow candles. The look screams peasant chic. You dress anyway. At least this one doesn't drip. The door creaks as you push it open. Morning fog rolls low over the ground, curling around huts and livestock. The world looks like it's exhaling. You step out into it, shivering as your breath turns into white mist. Somewhere nearby, a child laughs, a pig squeals, and a hammer rings from the forge. Life is already in motion, and you're late to the chaos. Today, though, you've been told to help with chores around the manor specifically, to visit the tailor and the tanner, to see what goes into clothing the medieval way. You brace yourself. The past few days have taught you that curiosity here usually leads to trauma. As you walk through the village, you notice the fashion show that is medieval practicality. Everyone's wearing variations of the same look. Tunics, aprons, hose, and more layers than a winter onion. There's no individuality here. Clothing isn't self-expression, it's survival strategy. You pass a group of women chatting as they spin wool into thread. The rhythm of their spinning wheels hums like bees, steady and hypnotic. They nod politely at you, but don't pause their work. Cold, eh? One of them says. You nod. Aye, she adds. Good for the fleas, though. Slows em down. You scratch your neck automatically. Farther ahead, you find the tailor's hut. The door hangs slightly askew, and the faint scent of damp cloth seeps out. You duck inside, and the world becomes a blur of colors and texture, bolts of wool, spools of thread, scraps of leather, and a table cluttered with needles, scissors, and bits of bone buttons. A thin man hunches over his workbench, squinting through the haze of candle smoke. He looks up, eyes sharp as awls. You're not from here, he says flatly. You admit as much, and he shrugs, returning to his stitching. No one ever is, he mutters. Folk come, folk go, clothes stay till they rot. You watch as he sews, his fingers moving fast, unbothered by the dim light. His thread is coarse, his stitches uneven, but there's precision in the imperfection. Every line, every knot, tells a story of necessity. You want a lesson? He asks suddenly. You hesitate, then nod. He hands you a needle, roughly the size of a small sword, and a square of wool. You try to push the needle through, it resists. You push harder. The wool stretches but doesn't give. The tailor smirks. Will fights back, he says. Always does. He tells you about how wool was the backbone of medieval Europe. It wasn't just clothing, it was economy, status, and survival, all rolled together. Whole towns thrived on spinning, weaving, and trading it. Even kings itch, he adds, dryly. You laugh, but he's right. Beneath silk and velvet, even nobles wore wool. He gestures toward a cloak hanging by the door. That one's mine, he says proudly, lined with rabbit fur, warm as sin, heavy as guilt. You touch it, surprisingly soft. Took me 2 years to trade for the fur, he adds, and another to sew it without ruining it. You can't help but admire the dedication. Clothing, here, is labor distilled into fabric. There's no fast fashion, no closets full of options. You wear what you can make, or what someone else makes, and you can afford. The tailor tells you about the sumptuary, law's rules, dictating what each class could wear. Peasants couldn't darn silk or bright dyes, only nobles could. Historians still argue whether those laws were strictly enforced, or more about social control than fashion policing. Either way, the message was clear. Know your place, even in cloth. When you leave his workshop, the smell of leather hits you before you even see the tanner's yard. It's not a smell you forget. Imagine a mix of rotting meat, smoke, and wet animal hide left in the sun for too long. Then multiply that by despair. The tanner himself, broad-bearded and perpetually damp, greets you with a grunt. Keep your nose closed, he advises, or you'll lose it. You try, but breathing through your mouth isn't much better. The air is thick with ammonia. Your eyes water instantly. He's standing over a large wooden vat filled with something brown and bubbling. You don't ask what it is. He tells you anyway. Urine, he says cheerfully, softens the hides. You blink, collected from the street. Everyone contributes. You silently vow never to touch leather again. He explains the process. First, soak the hides in lime to loosen the hair, then scrape them clean, then soak them again in urine or dung to make them pliable. Finally, stretch and dry them for days. You learn to stop smelling it, he says, or maybe the smell wins. As he works, he tells you that tanning is one of the lowest trades in the hierarchy. Tanners are necessary but avoided. They live on the outskirts, downstream from everyone else, literally and socially. Folk don't like to shake our hands, he says, grinning, but they sure like their boots. You realize how every trade here comes with a cost. The smith breathes smoke, the tailor's eyes go bad, the tanner loses his sense of smell and most of his dignity. Survival here isn't clean, it's a series of compromises. As the day stretches, you wander back toward the village square. You notice people patching clothes, darning socks, mending holes. Fabric is too precious to waste. A tear isn't fashion distress, it's a potential disaster. Children wear hand so patched they're practically quilts. You catch sight of a young girl weaving garlands of dried flowers into her hair. Beside her, her mother adjusts a linen coiffure head covering. That's part modesty, part necessity. Hair here isn't for showing off, it's for hiding from lice. You scratch your scalp reflexively. Again, at midday, you find yourself sitting near the well, munching on a crust of bread and thinking about modern comfort. Socks that match, fabric softener, the luxury of owning 10 shirts. Here, you'd be lucky to have 2, and one would double as your burial shroud. A man sits beside you, older, with hands like carved wood. He's wearing what looks like patched linen trousers, held together by sheer willpower. You knew, he asks. You nod. Don't look so miserable, he says. Better to live itchy than dead clean. You laugh, mostly because it's the only sane reaction. He grins. You'll learn. You don't fight the discomfort. You make friends with it. He's right, in a way. The longer you sit, the more the world settles around you. The smells, the rough textures, the constant hum of life, it all begins to blend into a kind of background music. Not pleasant, but familiar. Later, a storm rolls in. The wind whips through the streets, carrying soot and the faint scent of rain. People hurry to secure shutters, cover carts, gather animals. You join in, helping a woman drag a basket of wool indoors. She thanks you, then offers a scrap of cloth to wrap around your shoulders. Keep it dry, she says. Wet will break your heart. As thunder rumbles overhead, you retreat inside the nearest cottager, small tavern-like space where villagers gather. The fire crackles, the air thick with warmth and chatter. You sit by the hearth, drying your damp tunic, feeling almost civilized. Someone hands you a mug of ale. You accept it, sip, and instantly feel better. It's still lukewarm and earthy, but now it tastes like relief. Conversations swirl around you, gossip about the Lord's new horse, the miller's debts, and rumors of a fair coming soon. A woman mentions that the local weaver once made a cloak so fine it was mistaken for silk. Historians still argue whether he got paid for it or hanged for it. She adds, with a wink. You chuckle. Even in hardship, the humor's sharp here. Sarcasm is the one luxury no one can tax. The storm outside intensifies. Wind rattles the shutters, and rain drums against the roof. For a while, no one speaks. The fire pops, throwing shadows across the walls. You find yourself watching the flicker, thinking about how far civilization has come and how much it's lost along the way. In this flickering warmth, time feels blurry. You could almost forget the itch, the cold, the fleas. Almost as the rain eases, people begin drifting out. You follow, the ground slick underfoot. The air smells clean again, freshly washed by the storm. The setting sun glows orange behind the clouds, turning puddles into mirrors. You catch your reflection, mud-streaked, tired, wrapped in rough wool, and almost laugh. You look like you belong here now, part of the landscape. But deep down, you know, 1 week of this, and you'd crumble. You trudge back to your hut, peeling off the damp tunic and hanging it near the hearth. Your hands are red from the cold, your knuckles raw. You lie back on the straw bed, staring at the beams. The distant sound of the blacksmith's hammer fades, replaced by crickets and the low hum of the night. Tomorrow will bring more of the same mud, sweat, and itchy wool, but for now, in the quiet warmth of the fire's dying glow, you allow yourself to feel a small spark of gratitude. You've survived another day in a world that doesn't care whether you do, and somehow, that feels like victory. You wake to the sound of rain drumming on thatch. It isn't gentle rain, it's the kind that sounds like 1,000 impatient fingers tapping on your skull. You blink into the dim light, trying to remember if you fell asleep or simply collapsed. Your muscles ache in ways you didn't think possible. Every inch of you feels like it's been worked, stretched, and punished by a world that doesn't believe in comfort. The fire has died sometime in the night, leaving behind only a faint orange ghost. The air is cold enough to make your breath fog. You sit up, pulling the rough wool blanket around your shoulders, and stare at the small puddle that's formed in the corner of the hut. The thatch leaks. Of course, it leaks. You've come to expect this kind of small betrayal from the medieval world. It's always damp, always drafty, always slightly plotting your discomfort. Outside, the morning is grey and heavy, the sky sagging with rain clouds. Villagers move like ghosts through the mist, cloaked in coarse wool, hunched against the wind. Somewhere, a dog barks. Somewhere else, a woman shouts at her children to bring in the chickens. You can hear the soft slap of muddy boots, the squelch of the ground, the rhythm of survival continuing as if the weather were just another chore. You pull on your shoes, if you can call them that, and step into the muck. The water instantly seeps in. There's no avoiding it. Medieval shoes are little more than stitched leather sacks, barely water resistant, definitely not waterproof. The mud clings like wet bread dough. You sigh. Today, you've been told you'll be helping in the fields. You'd hoped to learn about knights, castles, or feasts by now. But no, the Middle Ages are stubbornly practical. Most people here don't live near castles or kings. They live in mud, work in mud, and eat things grown from mud. As you trudge toward the open fields, the rain slows to a drizzle. You pass rows of cottages, smoke curling from their chimneys, and realize that even in this bleak weather, there's a rhythm to it, all a kind of quiet resilience. Life here isn't about thriving, it's about refusing to stop. The fields stretch ahead like a quilt of brown and green, furrows running in long, uneven lines. A handful of figures are already at work, bent double like question marks, pulling weeds, turning soil, or sowing seed. You join them, unsure what to do. A woman in a hooded cloak holder, strong-looking, her hands stained dark from earth, points toward a hoe leaning against a post. "There," she says. "Work the row till you feel the burn, then keep working." You try. The hoe is heavier than it looks, the handles slick from rain and use. You dig into the soil, turning it over in uneven clumps. The smell of wet earth rises, rich and raw. Worms squirm, and small rocks clink against metal. The rhythm begins to settle, inlift, dig, twist, drop. It's not graceful, but it's strangely meditative. The woman watches you for a moment, then grins. "You'll toughen up, or break. We'll see which first." Her name is Marta. She's been working these fields her entire life. Between swings of the hoe, she tells you about how the seasons rule everything here: spring for planting, summer for tending, autumn for harvest, and winter for surviving. Each one's a fight, she says, but at least the ground don't talk back. She's right. The earth may resist, but it doesn't argue, it just demands. As the hours pass, the rain stops, and the clouds begin to thin. The air smells of wet grass and wood smoke. Your hands blister quickly, your back protests, but there's something grounding about the labor. You begin to understand why people here work the land with such devotion. It's the only thing that gives back. At midday, a bell rings faintly from the village square. Marta straightens, wipes her hands on her apron, and says, "Dinner." She means lunch, but the medieval day doesn't care for modern labels. You follow her back to the cottages, where a group of villagers sit around a communal fire pit. A large pot hangs over the flames, steam curling from it in fragrant waves. Inside, something thick and brown simmers. Pottage, the universal meal of the poor. Someone hands you a wooden bowl and a spoon carved from horn. The pottage smells of barley, onions, leeks, and maybe a hint of turnip. It's not exactly restaurant fare, but it's hot, and that's enough. You take a cautious sip. It tastes earthy and simple, like the land itself. Marta laughs when she sees your expression. "Don't look so surprised," she says. "We eat to live, not to dance." You nod, chewing slowly. Around you, people talk quietly about the weather, the Lord's taxes, and rumors of wolves in the nearby woods. Everyone's tired but content, bound together by the shared rhythm of labor and necessity. When you finish, you help wash the bowls in a basin of cold water. There's no soap, just sand for scrubbing and a lot of faith in rinsing. You dry your hands on your tunic and look around. Nearby, a group of men are loading hay into a cart. A young boy runs alongside, laughing as he tries to lift a bundle twice his size. His father ruffles his hair and shouts, "Grow faster, or the work will eat you alive." There's humor here, even in exhaustion. It's the only way to endure it. In the afternoon, you follow Marta to another part of the field, where she tends to a small vegetable garden. She explains crop rotation, though she doesn't call it that. "We move things around," she says, "else the ground gets tired. Peas after barley, onions after peas, then let it rest." She taps her hoe against the soil. The land breathes like we do. It's remarkable, you think, without formal science. They've learned the logic of nature through generations of observation. You start to see the intelligence woven into their simplicity. A flock of crows circles overhead, cawing greedily. Marta throws a handful of pebbles toward them and curses, "Thieves, the lot of them. They know more than priests." You chuckle. "Do priests steal too?" She gives you a look. "Not food," she says, "just hope." You realize she's not joking. As the sun begins to dip, painting the sky gold and grey, you help carry bundles of vegetables back toward the village. The air cools quickly. The road, slick with mud, reflects the faint light of torches being lit one by one. Smoke rises from chimneys, and somewhere, the church bell tolls vespers. Back near the square, a small group of travelers has arrived. Merchants, by the look of their wagons. Their goods are covered by tarps, but you glimpse flashes of color, bolts of cloth, jugs of oil, maybe even spices. The villagers gather curiously, eyeing the strangers. The merchants look out of plesklina, louder, wearing dyed fabrics that shimmer faintly in the torchlight. One of them, a tall man with a trimmed beard and a calculating smile, calls out, "Silk from the east. Pepper worth a prince's ransom. Step closer, good folk." The villagers murmur but hang back. Few here have coins to spare. Marta shakes her head. "Pepper," she mutters. "For what? To hide the taste of rot?" You remember reading somewhere that pepper was once more valuable than gold. Looking around at the muddy boots and patched tunics, you realize how absurd luxury must seem here. Hunger, cold, and labor are the only real currencies. You edge closer, watching as the merchant unrolls a piece of cloth. It glows crimson in the firelight, smooth as water. You've never seen anything like it. The villagers gasp. For a brief moment, the square feels enchanted, like a fairy tale cracked open. Then the moment passes. The merchant folds the cloth and packs it away. The crowd disperses, murmuring. The dream of silk vanishes as quickly as it appeared. As night settles, you find yourself sitting by a small fire outside your hut. The rain has stopped, and the stars peek through torn clouds. You stretch your sore hands toward the heat, the skin raw and cracked. Marta passes by, carrying a bundle of wood. She pauses and nods toward your fire. You're learning, she says. Learning what? To live with less. You nod, unsure how to respond. She sits beside you, staring into the flames. Folk think suffering makes us holy, she says quietly. But I think it just makes us careful. You look at her, at the deep lines carved by years of work and weather. She's not bitter, just practical. There's strength in that. The conversation fades into silence. The fire crackles, crickets sing in the dark. Somewhere, a dog barks at nothing. You think about the rhythm of the day, the blisters, the mud, the simple food, the laughter in between. It's not the kind of life anyone would choose now, but it's the one they knew, and within it, there's something oddly peaceful. The stars brighten, sharp and countless. Without the haze of modern lights, the sky looks impossibly vast. You can almost hear it breathe. You close your eyes, letting the sounds of the village lull you, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through thatch, the occasional laugh from the tavern. It's a symphony of endurance. When you finally crawl into bed, your body feels like lead, but this time, the straw doesn't seem quite as rough, the blanket not quite as cold. Maybe you're getting used to it, or maybe the Middle Ages are getting used to you. Before sleep takes you, you think of Marta's words, better to live with less than not live at all. You understand now, in a world where survival itself is an achievement, every breath is a small act of rebellion. And so, as the night deepens and the rain begins again, you drift off to the rhythm of the medieval world, a steady, unending heartbeat beneath the mud and stars. The rooster doesn't so much crow as scream, a raspy, triumphant declaration that sleep is a luxury you can't afford. You open your eyes, already dreading the stiffness that greets you each morning. Your hands are raw from yesterday's work. Your back feels like it's been introduced to medieval dentistry. And your legs, well, they no longer belong to you. They belong to the fields, to the mud, to the endless rhythm of survival. You sit up, rubbing your face, and glance around. Marta's already gone, of course. The woman rises with the dawn and treats exhaustion like an old friend. The cottage is silent, except for the faint hiss of wind sneaking through the cracks in the wood. You pull on your tunic, damp from yesterday's rain, and head outside. The morning mist still clings to the earth, turning everything silver. A few villagers move through the haze carrying buckets, leading goats, sweeping the dirt outside their doors, as though sweeping might keep the chaos of life at bay. Today, though, you're not heading to the fields. Marta's husband, who seems to know everyone and everything, has arranged for you to help out. With the smithy in the village square, you imagine the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil, sparks flying, glowing metal bending beneath strength and skill. It sounds romantic until you arrive. The blacksmith's workshop is a cave of heat and noise. The air shimmers with smoke and ash, smelling of iron and sweat. Sparks leap like angry fireflies each time the hammer strikes, lighting the shadows for just a heartbeat. The blacksmith himself is a mountain of a man with arms that look carved from tree trunks. His name, fittingly, is Wolfric. He eyes you up and down, unimpressed. You ever swung a hammer? Not like this. You admit, he grunts. You'll learn, or you'll break. There it is, again, learn or break. The medieval mantra. Wulfric hands you a smaller hammer and points toward a long strip of glowing iron resting on the anvil. Hold steady, he says, and don't blink when I swing. You blink, you bleed. Your first task is simple, or so he claims. You're to help shape nails. Not swords, not armor, not horseshoes. Nails. Hundreds of them. Tiny, stubborn pieces of metal that refuse to cooperate. You watch as Wulfric heats the iron until it glows orange, then begins striking with precision, shaping, twisting, slicing. Each movement looks effortless, like a dance choreographed by centuries of repetition. Then it's your turn. You lift the hammer. It's heavier than it looks, and the first strike misses completely, hitting the anvil with a sound that rattles your bones. Wulfric doesn't even look up. Again, he says. You try, and again, and again. The sound of your hammer becomes a desperate rhythm, clumsy, inconsistent, but determined. Sweat drips into your eyes, the heat claws at your throat, and your arms start to tremble. After what feels like hours, Wulfric finally inspects your work. He picks up one of your nails, turns it in the light, and snorts. Looks like a bent carrot, he mutters, but at least it's a nail. A victory, small but real. As you pause to wipe your face, he nods toward the open door. Go fetch water, barrels near the well. Don't take all day. Outside, the air feels like a blessing after the suffocating forge. You walk toward the well, stretching your aching arms. The village is busier, now merchants setting up stalls, children chasing a scrawny chicken, a group of women gossiping as they spin wool. Life pulses through every crooked street. You pass a cooper hammering hoops around a barrel, a thatcher balancing precariously on a roof, and a tanner scrubbing hides near the river. Each trade has its own smell, its own rhythm, its own little world. You realize that in this era, your job isn't what defines you, it's what keeps you alive. There are no weekends, no pensions, no promotions. There's only today's work and tomorrow's hope. As you haul the heavy bucket of water back to the forge, you notice a small boy sitting nearby, carving wood with surprising precision. His tongue pokes out in concentration as he shapes a toy horse. When he sees you watching, he grins shyly. Your hammer's too big, he says. You laugh, and your knife's too sharp. He nods toward Wulfric. That's my deal, says work makes a man, but I think stories do. Stories? The boy nods again. The old woman by the chapel tells them, she says. The forge fire remembers everything ever made. It's such an oddly poetic thought that you almost forget your arms are about to fall off. Maybe it remembers you too, you say. He grins wider. Then I hope it remembers my toy horse. Back in the forge, the air feels even hotter. Wulfric's shaping a horseshoe now, the metal sparking like captured lightning. That'll go to the miller's mare, he says without looking up. Good beast. Smarter than her owner. You smirk, and he glances at you, one eyebrow raised. You think that's funny. Wait till the mare steps on your foot. You decide not to test that theory. As the hours drag on, your arms move almost on instinct. Lift, strike, lift, strike. The sound of the hammer becomes hypnotic. Somewhere in the haze, you realize that Wulfric's craft is less brute force and more art. Each piece of iron is shaped by balance, patience, and rhythm. At midday, you step outside again. The sun burns through the clouds, turning the mud to steam. Marta passes by carrying a basket of herbs, waving when she sees you. Still alive, she calls. Barely you answer. She laughs. Then you're fitting in. You sit on a log to eat your meal course bread and a sliver of cheese. Wulfric joins you, gnawing on something that looks dangerously undercooked. For a moment, the silence between you feels oddly companionable. He glances at the sky. Storm coming. You can smell it, can't you? You sniff. There's something electric in the air, sharp and metallic, like anticipation. I think so. He nods. The forge likes storms. Fire feeds on fear. You're not sure if that's metaphor or superstition, but you let it slide. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were partly feared in their time scene as both craftsmen and sorcerers. Half accepted, half whispered about. Watching Wulfric in the flickering glow, you can see why. There's something elemental about him, as if he's negotiating with the universe through fire and metal. By late afternoon, thunder grumbles in the distance. You work faster, trying to finish shaping a final set of nails before the rain hits. The light dims, and the first fat drops splash against the earth. Wulfric moves with calm precision, ignoring the storm's growl. Metal listens to weather, he says. Too hot, it cracks. Too cold, it sulks. The rain thickens. Water streams down from the roof, sizzling as it hits the forge's edge. The air fills with the scent of ozone and smoke. You can barely see beyond the doorway, but you keep hammering, lost in the rhythm, and then it happens. The hammer slips. It catches your thumb instead of the nail. The pain is instant, blinding. You hiss and drop the tool, clutching your hand. Wulfric doesn't even flinch. You blinked, he says dryly. You want to protest, but all that comes out is a pained laugh. The boy outside hears it and calls, "Told you your hammer's too big." When the storm finally passes, the air cools, the earth sighs, and the forge's heat feels almost pleasant. You look at the small pile of bent nails you've made, feeling strangely proud. They're ugly, imperfect, but they exist. Wulfric wipes his hands on a rag and gestures toward your work. You'll never be rich, he says, but you'll never freeze, either. Iron's loyal that way. He hands you one of your crooked nails, closing your fingers around it. Keep it, reminder that every scar makes the next strike better. It's oddly philosophical, coming from a man who can bend metal with his bare hands. You tuck the nail into your belt, nodding as evening falls. The village hums with renewed life. Smoke rises from chimneys, laughter spills from the alehouse, and the smell of roasting meat floats through the damp air. You walk through the square, feeling the ache in your arms transform into something warmer. Quiet satisfaction that you've earned the right to sit, to rest, to exist here for one more day. You stop by the tavern's open door. The light spills out golden and alive. Inside, a few men sing off-key tankards, thumping on wooden tables. You catch fragments of conversation, taxes, weather, gossip about the Lord's new steward who don't know dung from dough. You smile and move on. The medieval world is loud, rough, and utterly human. By the time you reach your hut, the sky is deep blue and star-pocked. You collapse onto the straw bed, every muscle singing in protest. The nail Wulfric gave you rests on the table beside you. Catching the faint firelight, you stare at it for a while, thinking about everything it took to make a dance of flame, patience, and pain. A small, bent piece of metal that could hold a house together or pin a coffin shut. There's poetry in that, you realize. The medieval world isn't just brutal, it's earnest. Everything costs something, everything matters, because nothing comes easy. Your thumb throbs, your lungs still taste of smoke, but you smile anyway. Tomorrow there will be more mud, more work, more aching muscles, but for now, you've earned a small victory. You survived another day. Outside, the wind carries the faint clang of Wulfric's hammer echoing through the dark, steady as a heartbeat. You wonder if, centuries from now, anyone will remember the rhythm of this world, the songs of metal and rain, the laughter under exhaustion, the smell of iron and wood smoke blending into history. You hope so, because, even if you wouldn't last long here, you understand it now. This life isn't about glory or heroism. It's about endurance. It's about waking up each morning, facing the mud, the heat, the hunger, and saying, "Not today." You close your eyes, listening to the night breathe around you. Somewhere far away, thunder mutters like an old god turning in his sleep. The forge cools, the stars shimmer, the medieval world exigent. And so do you. You wake to an unexpected stillness. No rain, no wind, no roosters shrieking like they're auditioning for a nightmare. Just quiet. The kind of morning where fog rolls in thick and slow, smothering the world like a heavy blanket. For a few blissful seconds, you think you're back in your own bed. Soft sheets, electric hum of the fridge, the faint buzz of your phone alarm. Then the smell hits you. Smoke, sweat, manure. Ah yes, the Middle Ages. Still here, still deeply offended by the concept of deodorant. You roll over, groaning as your spine crackles like dry twigs, and glance toward the doorway. A pale grey light seeps through the cracks in the wood. The air feels damp, cool, and alive with the faint sound of distant bells, calling villagers to prayer or work, or possibly both. When you finally step outside, the fog has transformed the village into something almost otherworldly. Shapes drift and blur, roofs appear and vanish. The world smells like wet straw, smoke, and earth. You can barely see the nearest hut. The mist moves like a living thing, swallowing sound and space, until even your own footsteps seem distant. You pull your cloak tighter. The thatch drips cold water onto your neck. Somewhere ahead, you can hear the slow rhythm of hooves on mud. A wagon creaks into view, driven by a man whose face looks like it was carved from oak. He nods at you as he passes. "Smells bad today," he says conversationally. You blink. "Smells bad." He gestures around. Better than usual, though." Then he's gone, swallowed by fog. You take a cautious sniff. The air indeed carries layers. Smoke from cooking fires, wet leather, something faintly sour like spoiled milk, and something sharp, almost metallic. You turn toward the village square, and as the fog begins to thin, the full bouquet of medieval living greets you in all its pungent glory. The smell is everywhere. It's the smell of life before plumbing, before sewers, before the miracle of detergent. Every breath tells a story. You pass a row of houses and notice the narrow gaps between them, filled with refuse, vegetable scraps, straw, and darker things best left undescribed. A stream runs through the center of the road, carrying away wasteland, sometimes not fast enough. The medieval version of taking out the trash is simply opening your door and tossing it into the street. You step carefully, realizing that the mud under your boots is not entirely mud. Across the way, a man empties a wooden bucket out his window with a casual flick. The contents splash onto the ground. He sees your horrified expression and shrugs. "Night soil," he says. "Everyone does it." You decide not to ask for clarification. Further down, the smell shifts again. Now it's warm, earthy, almost comforting. You find its source near a stable where horses and pigs share space with surprising harmony or mutual resignation. The stable boy, a gangly teenager with straw in his hair, waves cheerfully. "Mind your step," he calls. "The pigs ain't picky where they go." You laugh weakly. Neither are people, it seems. He grins. Ain't that the truth? Still, amid the chaos, there's a rhythm and order to the disorder. The animals grunt and snort. Chickens scurry between legs. Dogs chase scraps tossed from a nearby doorway. Life here is noisy, dirty, and unapologetically real. You head toward the market square, where the fog has finally begun to lift. The air brightens, though not necessarily freshens. Smoke rises from a baker's chimney, carrying the scent of bread, a smell so good it nearly cancels out everything else. You follow your nose toward the stall, drawn like a moth to a carb. The baker, a round-faced woman with arms like battering rams, pulls loaves from the oven with practiced grace. You hungry, stranger? She asks, eyeing your mud-streaked clothes. Always? You admit. She chuckles and breaks off a small piece of bread, handing it to you. It's coarse, dense, but delicious. Warm, nutty, with a faint hint of smoke. That's barley and rye, she says proudly. Best in the village. Don't ask what's in it, some secrets. Keep the flavor. You hesitate. Secrets. Grain's expensive. Sometimes we stretch it a bit. Add what we've got. You decide not to think about what we've got means. Instead, you nod gratefully and take another bite. It's amazing what hunger can forgive. As you eat, she gestures toward the nearby stalls. Market day, she says. Folk come from miles. Smells bad, but money's good. You glance around. She's right. The square is alive with motion and sound. Merchants shout over one another, selling everything from wool to fish to vegetables that look suspiciously tired. A butcher's stall draws a small crowd, the air thick with the smell of blood and salt. You wander closer out of curiosity. You tell yourself, fanned watch as the butcher hacks through a side of meat with a cleaver that's seen better days. Flies swarm instantly, undeterred by the swatting cloth hanging nearby. The butcher doesn't mind. He's too busy joking with customers about which cuts will last the longest without crawling off the table. You manage a polite smile and back away before the next chop lands. Nearby, a fishmonger arranges her wares on a bed of damp straw. The fish glisten in the morning light, their eyes clouded, fresh from the river. She calls out, caught at dawn. You glance at the sun already high and raise an eyebrow. She catches your look and winks. Dawn yesterday, she admits. You laugh, half in disbelief, half in surrender. You've learned that in the medieval world, freshness is less a promise and more a suggestion. As the day warms, the smells intensify. Sweat, smoke, and livestock blend into one relentless perfume. You catch whiffs of ale from the tavern, sour milk from a dairy cart. Even the sharp bite of tanning hides from the edge of the village. The tanner's yard is infamous, a stretch of ground where hides are soaked in vats of urine and lime, creating a stench that could knock a bird from the sky. You approach, out of morbid curiosity, covering your nose with your sleeve. The tanner himself, a wiry man with a surprisingly cheerful expression, waves as you approach. Fine day for the work, eh? He says brightly. You manage a muffled, depends what you call fine. He grins. You get used to it. Nose dies after a year or two. You decide not to test his theory. Still, there's something admirable about his resilience. Every trade here is brutal in its own way, yet everyone carries on, finding humor where they can. As you leave the tanner's yard, Marta appears, carrying a basket of herbs. There you are, she says. I've been looking for you. Why? She grins. You're helping me with the wash. You're about to protest when she thrusts a bundle of cloth into your arms. The smell hits immediately, sweat, dirt, something vaguely animal. You cough. These are clothes, she laughs. Used to be. You follow her to the riverbank, where several women are already at work, beating clothes against flat stones. The river runs shallow and brown, carrying silt and the occasional unlucky fish. The women chat and laugh as they scrub, their voices carrying over the splash of water. Marta hands you a bar of sopa grey, lumpy thing that looks like it's been carved from old cheese. Lye and tallow, she explains. Don't eat it. You kneel beside her and dunk the first tunic into the water. It instantly turns darker. You scrub with enthusiasm, if not skill. After a few minutes, Marta shakes her head. You're too gentle, she says. You must beat it, like it owes you rent. You do as she says, slapping the cloth against the rock with satisfying smacks. She laughs. Now you're learning. As the work continues, conversation drifts naturally from gossip about the Lord's steward to speculation about whether the coming winter will be harsh. One woman insists she saw a raven with 3 feathers, missing a bad omen. Another claims her husband's bad luck started when he whistled during Mass. Historians still argue whether superstition was faith or fear. You think to yourself, wringing out another tunic. But to these women, it's just life. Every small sign, every strange sound, every cloud in the wrong shape means something. It's how they make sense of a world that offers few answers. By midday, the sun burns away the last of the fog, and the village feels almost bright. Clean clothes, relatively speaking, hang on lines strung between huts. The scent of soap, faint though it is, mingles with the ever-present aroma of livestock and smoke. You and Marta sit by the riverbank, sharing a crust of bread and watching ducks paddle through the shallows. You get used to it, she says, nodding toward the village. The smell, all of it, the noise, the dirt, the hunger. After a while, you stop wishing for clean hands. You just wish for steady ones. You think about that for a moment. Its true comfort here isn't about luxury. It's about consistency. A day without catastrophe is a good day. As the afternoon stretches on, you wander back toward the square. Children chase each other through puddles, shrieking with laughter. A group of men repair a broken fence, singing off-key. Even the air, thick with the perfume of humanity, feels somehow alive. You pause near the church, where a priest is sprinkling holy water over a line of parishioners. The scent of incense drifts through the air, resinous, sweet, oddly soothing. For a moment, it almost masks the other smells. Almost, you find yourself smiling. The medieval world is filthy, smelly, and endlessly uncomfortable, but it's also human in ways the modern world sometimes forgets. People here live close to the earth, to each other, to everything that sustains and challenges them. You take one last deep breath. Hay, bread, sweat, and all, and head home. That night, as you lie in your straw bed, the scent of the village still clings to your skin. It's not pleasant, but it's real. It's proof that you existed here, if only for a day. And as sleep finally pulls you under, you think, maybe you wouldn't last long in medieval times, but maybe, just maybe, you'd learn to breathe differently. The sun rises heavy and golden, spilling over the thatched rooftops like honey. The mist that haunted the village yesterday has finally gone, burned away by warmth and dust. Roosters scream their dawn alarms. Somewhere, a dog barks endlessly. You roll over on your scratchy straw mattress and immediately regret it. Your back protests. Your neck feels like twisted rope, and your legs are covered in new bites from unseen creatures that clearly consider you part of the ecosystem now. You groan, stretch, and glance toward the window. The air looks clean, crisp even, but you've been fooled before. The smell of humanity still clings to everything. though it's mixed today with something new. The metallic temps of iron. Somewhere, someone's working. Outside the village, hums differently this morning. You follow the rhythmic clang of hammer against metal, echoing through the air like a heartbeat. The sound leads you to a low, soot-streaked building, open at the front, smoke pouring from a chimney. Inside, the blacksmith is already at work, stripped to the waist, his skin glistening with sweat and sparks. Each swing of his hammer lands with precision, striking molten metal on an anvil that hums like a drum. The heat hits you like a wall. The air smells of ash, iron, and something faintly sweet-burnt charcoal mixed with human effort. You're early, the blacksmith grunts, not looking up. You blink. Early, for what? For curiosity, I suppose, he says, striking again. Most folk only come when they need something mended. What brings you here? You shrug. The sound. He nods once, approvingly. Good sound, isn't it? Reminds you the world's being built, one hit at a time. You watch as he plunges the glowing metal into a barrel of water. Steam bursts upward, filling the air with a hiss that sounds almost alive. The sudden chill makes you shiver. He lifts the piece a horseshoe end, inspects it with the care of an artist. You make these every day, you ask. Every day, every week, every season, he says, setting it aside. Horses need shoes, knights need swords, farmers need plows. Without a smith, the world stops turning. He's not wrong. In the medieval world, blacksmiths are both craftsmen and magicians. Their forges transform earth into utility, fire into function. Their tools keep villagers alive. You think about how you've taken metal for granted. Cutlery, hinges, nails, all invisible until they aren't there. Historians still argue, you recall, whether blacksmiths were the backbone of society or simply one part of it. But standing here, sweat beading on your forehead, you're convinced they were the heart. The blacksmith wipes his brow and smirks. You want to try? You laugh nervously. Try what, making a sword? He grins. No. Holding the hammer. You take it, surprised by its weight. It feels alive, dense with purpose. You raise it awkwardly and bring it down. The clang echoes through your arms, rattling your bones. He chuckles. You hit like a priest, he says. You grin back. A peaceful one, maybe. He nods toward the street. Go find the farrier. He's shoeing a mare this morning. If you want to see what this work is for, that's the place. You thank him and head out, the smell of hot metal lingering on your clothes. The farrier's yard isn't far, just beyond the stables, where the scent of hay and horseflesh thickens the air. A man crouches beside a chestnut mare, holding one of her hooves steady. His apron is stained with soot and hair. He works quickly, hammering the new shoe into place, while the animal flicks her ears in mild annoyance. The process is loud, smoky, and thankfully, when he's done, he pats the mare's neck affectionately. There, he murmurs, you're ready to work again. You're struck by how every part of medieval life loops into another. The smith forges the shoe, the farrier fits it, the farmer relies on it. Nothing is wasted. Everything is part of the same chain. You glance at the mare's owner, a woman with broad shoulders and a dirt-smudged face, waiting patiently with a small sack of grain. She notices you staring and raises an eyebrow. You from the manor. You shake your head, just passing through. Then watch your boots, she says, tossing a coin to the farrier. The road's worse after rain. She's right. By the time you head toward the fields, your boots are caked with mud, so thick it feels like the earth is trying to reclaim you. Out here, beyond the village, the rhythm of the day changes. You hear it before you see it, the scrape of metal against soil, the low murmur of workers, the occasional shout as oxen pull heavy plows through stubborn earth. You pass a group of peasants bent low over the fields. Their movements are slow but steady. One woman wipes her brow with her sleeve, leaving a dark streak of dirt across her face. Another man pauses to stretch his back, groaning. You try to imagine joining them, the handle of the plow biting into your hands, the sun burning your neck, the endless repetition of pushing, pulling, tilling, no modern shortcuts, no machinery, just raw endurance. One of the men looks up. You lost, maybe, you admit. I was just watching. He grins, missing half his teeth. Then you're lucky. Watching's easy. You smile faintly. Do you ever rest? When the ground does, he says. Otherwise, it eats us. His words settle over you like dust. There's no poetry in them, just truth. Farming isn't romance here, it's survival. The fields are both blessing and curse, feeding the people and breaking their bodies in the process. You step closer, and he gestures toward a pile of weeds at his feet. You can help if you're not afraid of dirt. You crouch down and start pulling, your fingers sinking into damp soil. It's oddly satisfying, the resistance, the give, the faint smell of earth that feels almost clean compared to the village. Birds sing somewhere overhead. For a while, the rhythm of the work quiets your mind. Still, you notice how hard it is. Every weed seems anchored to the planet's core. Every movement costs energy. You remember reading that medieval peasants burned more calories per day than modern athletes. You're starting to believe it. When you finally stand, your back aches, your knees protest, and your hands are streaked brown. The farmer laughs softly. You look like you've been born again, he says. Through mud, through work, he replies. The noon bell rings faintly from the church tower. The workers straighten, stretch, and wander toward a shaded patch near the trees. It's mealtime, nothing fancy, just bread, onions, and thin ale. Someone passes you a hunk of bread, and you take it gratefully. The bread's coarse, rough, a little sour, but after hours in the sun, it tastes like victory. You wash it down with a swallow of ale that's warm and slightly yeasty. You drink this every day, you ask. Safer than water, one woman says, biting into an onion like it's an apple. She's right. Medieval water sources were often riddled with bacteria. Brewing ale, even weak ale, boiled the water and made it safer to drink. It's the medieval version of bottled water, except it comes with a mild buzz. Historians still argue, you muse, whether medieval folk were constantly tipsy or just immune. But sitting here among them, you think maybe both could be true. After lunch, the workers return to their labor, and you decide to wander further down the road. The village fades behind you, replaced by open countryside, rolling hills, scattered trees, the faint shimmer of distant water. The air feels lighter here, free of smoke and manure. You spot a small group near a stream, 2 women washing vegetables, a man mending a net. They wave as you approach, friendly but cautious. You from the manor? One asks again. It's the same question everywhere. You shake your head. No, just learning. The man chuckles. Then you'll learn this: everything we eat, we make. Everything we break, we fix. He gestures toward the net. Fish won't catch themselves. You sit with them for a while, watching as they work. The water glitters in the sunlight. Tiny insects dance across the surface. The air smells clean, almost shockingly so. And for a fleeting moment, you understand why people stayed in places like this. Despite the filth, the hardship, the endless labor, there's peace here, a kind of groundedness modern life rarely gives. Then, as if the universe wants to remind you not to romanticize things, A nearby cow lets out a spectacularly loud noise, followed by an equally spectacular smell. The women laugh so hard they nearly drop their vegetables. You laugh too, because what else can you do? By late afternoon, you make your way back toward the village. The light has softened, turning gold and orange. Children run past you, chasing a wooden hoop, their laughter echoing down the lane. You pass the blacksmith, again still working, sparks flying like fireflies around him. The rhythm of the hammer continues, steady as a heartbeat. You stop to watch one last time. He looks up briefly and nods. "You'll sleep well tonight," he says, knowingly. He's right. By the time you reach your small, smoke-stained hut, your muscles ache in places you didn't know existed. You lie down, exhausted but strangely content. Through the thin walls, you can hear the life of the village winding down. A baby crying, a dog barking, a man singing off-key in the tavern. The smell of stew drifts through the Aranyan's barley. Maybe a scrap of meat, if luck was kind today. You close your eyes. For all its discomforts, this world feels alive in every breath, every sound, every spark. You can almost imagine staying here a little longer, just long enough to learn the rhythm, to blend in, to belong. But as your mind drifts toward sleep, a single thought bubbles up through the haze. Tomorrow, you'll have to face the castle, and that, you suspect, will make today look like a vacation. The morning air feels different, crisper, charged with something that makes your skin prickle. The chatter of villagers hums behind you as you stand on the narrow dirt path that snakes toward the looming silhouette ahead. The castle, dot from a distance. It looks magnificent, towers piercing the sky, flags fluttering lazily in the breeze, sunlight glinting off the stone. But as you get closer, majesty fades into intimidation. The walls rise high, cold and grey, their stones pitted with age and smoke. You can almost hear the echo of centuries inside them, secrets, whispers, betrayals. The road leading to the gate is steep, winding past mossy rocks and trickling streams. Every step reminds you that this fortress wasn't built for comfort, it was built to endure, to dominate, to remind everyone who owned the land. You reach the gate just as it groans open, the portcullis iron grid sharp enough to slice a limb rattles as it lifts. The guards stand watch, their armor dull from wear, their faces impassive. One looks you up and down, squinting. "Purpose," he grunts. You clear your throat. "Just visiting," he snorts. "Nobody just visits a lord's keep." "Maybe I'm lost," you offer weakly. The other guard smirks, lost or mad. "Either way, you'll fit in." He gestures you through dot inside. The courtyard buzzes with activity. Servants haul buckets of water. Stable hands brush down horses. Soldiers polish weapons under the faint sunlight. The air smells of iron, sweat, and damp stone, a combination that somehow feels both powerful and claustrophobic. You wander past a rack of spears taller than you, stopping when one soldier lifts his visor to nod in greeting. "New recruit?" he asks. "Visitor," you reply. He grins. "Then enjoy the show. We've got drills today." You follow him toward the training yard, where a dozen men in padded tunics are hacking at wooden posts with swords. The sound of metal on wood rings, sharp and rhythmic. A grizzled instructor paces behind them, shouting corrections. "Too slow," he barks at one. You swing like a monk at confession. The men laugh, then groan as he orders them to start again. Sweat flies through the air, boots churn up dust. You lean against the wall, watching. It's mesmerizing, the repetition, the grit, the brutal elegance of it all. You realize quickly that combat here isn't glorious or cinematic. It's exhausting. Each movement is calculated for survival. not spectacle. Historians still argue whether training or luck made the better knight. You think as you watch one trainee stumble and barely block a blow. Looking at this, luck seems the stronger argument. The instructor catches you, observing. "You," he shouts. "You look like you could use a sword." You freeze. "Oh no." He tosses one at you. It lands heavily in your arms, nearly dragging you down. The men chuckle. "Hold it steady," the instructor says. "Feet apart. Now, try to swing." You do. Badly. The sword feels alive, unwieldy, as if it's mocking your soft, modern muscles. The instructor sighs. You'd last 3 seconds in battle. Maybe 4 if your opponent was feeling merciful. You hand the sword back quickly. "Then I'll stick to watching. Thanks." He grins. "Wise. But you've got spirit. Most faint by now." You decide that's a compliment and take your leave. That as you move deeper into the castle grounds, the atmosphere shifts. The clang of metal fades, replaced by quieter sounds, the shuffle of servants, the echo of footsteps on stone. The air cools, damp and shadowed. You pass beneath archways lined with faded banners, their colors long surrendered to time. The great hall awaits beyond a pair of carved doors. They creak open to reveal a room that swallows sound. Sunlight filters through narrow windows, cutting through dust motes like golden spears. Long tables stretch down the center, empty now except for a few wooden cups and the faint smell of roasted meat lingering from some earlier feast at the far end. A raised dais holds a single heavy chair. Not a throne exactly, but close enough. Sitting in it is the Lord himself, draped in wool and fur, one hand resting lazily on the armrest, the other gripping a goblet. His eyes find you instantly. "Who are you?" You bow awkwardly. "Just a traveler." He studies you for a long moment. "A traveler who wanders into my hall uninvited." You swallow. "Your guards let me through, did they?" His lips twitch. "Then I'll need to remind them what their job is." He rises slowly. Despite his fine clothes, he moves with the heavy gait of a man used to armor. "Still, it's been dull lately. Perhaps you'll offer some amusement." You're not sure whether that's good or bad. He gestures for a servant to bring wine. "Sit." You obey. The wine tastes sharp and smoky, nothing like what you'd expect. The Lord drinks deeply, then sets his goblet down. "So, traveler, tell me of your lands." You hesitate. "Far from here." He smirks. "Everyone says that when they don't want to answer." You manage a faint smile. "Maybe I just like mystery." He laughs, a deep, rolling sound that fills the hall. "Then you'll get along with my wife." As if on cue, the door opens, and a woman enters, her gown sweeping across the stone floor like water. Her face is pale, her eyes sharp. She carries herself like someone used to being both admired and feared. "This the visitor?" she asks, raising an eyebrow. Her husband nods, claims to be a traveler. She studies you for a beat, then smiles faintly. "A traveler without mud on their boots is a liar." You glance down instinctively. Your boots, somehow, are spotless. You'd forgotten you cleaned them in the stream yesterday. "Lucky timing," you say weakly. Her smile widens, but not kindly. Luck is a fickle guest here. The tension lingers for a heartbeat too long before the Lord waves his hand dismissively. "Enough, my dear. Let's not terrify the poor soul." She glides past him, taking a seat near the fire. The flickering light dances across her rings, her eyes. "I don't terrify," she says softly. "I illuminate." You decide not to respond. The Lord leans back. "You seem clever enough. Tell me, what do you make of our castle?" You glance around. Careful, strong walls, fine stonework, but It feels cold. He nods slowly. Castles are built to endure, not to comfort. People think them grand. Truth is, they're prisons made of pride. It's a startling admission. He catches your surprise and smiles. Don't look so shocked. A lord's life isn't luxury, it's vigilance. Every feast, every night's sleep, every whispered word could end with a knife. His wife's voice cuts in smoothly, especially if he drinks too much. He laughs again, especially then. As the conversation drifts, servants enter with platters, cheese, salted pork, dense bread. You realize you've stumbled into the Lord's dinner. You eat carefully, observing the ritual of it all. The servants move silently, heads bowed. A fool in bright colors sits near the corner, strumming a lute between nervous glances. You taste the pork, it's dry but flavorful, smoked and salty. The cheese is strong, the bread hard enough to crack a tooth, and yet, compared to the meals you've seen in the village, it's a banquet. You glance toward the servants. One, a young girl, keeps her gaze fixed on the floor as she pours wine. Her hands tremble slightly. The lady of the house notices and frowns. Careful, she warns. Last time you spilled, it took a week to wash out. The girl nods quickly, murmuring apologies. You feel a pang of unease. This world, for all its hierarchy and order, runs on fear as much as duty. When the meal ends, the Lord stands. Walk with me, he says. You follow him out into the courtyard. The night air is cool, and torches flicker along the walls. From here, the village below looks small, distant, a cluster of lights, surrounded by darkness. Do you see them? He asks quietly. The ones down there? You nod. They think this place keeps them safe, he says. But safety's an illusion. A castle keeps enemies out, but it traps everyone else in. His words surprise you with their honesty. Do you ever wish to leave? You ask. He chuckles softly. Every man dreams of freedom, but power has its own gravity. You walk in silence for a moment, the crunch of gravel underfoot the only sound. Then he stops and looks at you. Remember this, traveler. The walls that protect you are the same ones that confine you. Don't forget that. He turns back toward the hall, leaving you alone in the courtyard. The night hums with faint sounds, an owl, the whisper of wind through banners, the distant clatter of armor. You look up at the stars. They're brilliant, sharp, almost too bright. The air smells faintly of smoke and iron. Somewhere deep inside the castle, a bell tolls. Midnight. You realize then that everything here, every stone, every voice, every glint of metal is built on tension. The villagers toil, the knights train, the nobles plot. The entire system holds together not by trust, but by necessity. And you, for all your modern sensibilities, are standing in the middle of it, breathing its air, feeling its weight, sensing how fragile the illusion of stability truly is. You take one last look at the towers silhouetted against the moonlight. They seem eternal, but you know better. Even stone crumbles as you walk back toward the gate. You think, maybe you wouldn't last a day in medieval times, but some people spent lifetimes trapped behind these very walls, and somehow that feels like the greater tragedy. You find yourself blinking against the golden light of torches flickering along a corridor lined with tapestries, the kind that seem to swallow sound and gossip alike. The air smells faintly of beeswax and roasted meat, but also something else, perfumed deceit. You've stumbled into the upper crust of medieval life, where manners are armor, and a misplaced word can mean the gallows or, at best, a long and silent exile. Courtly life, you quickly discover, is less about grandeur and more about surviving the conversational minefield. You move slowly, careful not to make eye contact with anyone who looks like they've had a bad day, which, judging by the faces, is most of the room. The first thing you notice is the sound, not the clang of hammers or the creak of wagon wheels, but the low hum of human whispers. Nobles talk like snakes, shedding rumors instead of skin-soft, slithering, deliberate. Someone at the far end of the hall laughs just a little too loudly, and heads turn like vultures, spotting something shiny. You tug at the borrowed tunic that marks you as almost respectable, praying you don't accidentally use the wrong fork or worse, the wrong tone of voice. There's a pecking order here, and you, dear traveler, are somewhere near the pigeons, pecking crumbs off the floor. Historians still argue whether the medieval court was truly a refined center of culture or just a very expensive way to ruin lives through politics and perfume. Either way, you're right in the middle of it, trying to keep your expression pleasant while your stomach growls. The woman next to you, dressed in layers of velvet that could feed a family for a year, gives you a look that could freeze milk. You smile back in what you hope is a courtly wayhap bow, half apology, and she blinks slowly, as if wondering which ditch you crawled out of. There's a feast tonight. That means long tables groaning under the weight of meats, pies, and flagons of ale, but it also means etiquette. Every bite you take, every glance, every gesture is part of an unspoken play, and you haven't been given the script. You sit when others sit. Raise your cup only when someone more important does first. And pray you don't accidentally make eye contact with the king. The bread is rough, the wine sharp, and the conversation sharper. To your left, two courtiers debate whether the duke's nephew is plotting against him. To your right, someone is explaining in excruciating detail how astrology determines which days are best for war romance. Between bites, you realize the hierarchy isn't about who has money, but who has presence. Nobles glide, peasants shuffle. Nobles whisper, peasants shout. You, unsure which you are at this point, do an awkward mix of both. When a jester tumbles into the room wearing bells and a grin, the tension breaks for a moment. He tells a joke about a priest, a goat, and the price of turnips. And everyone laughs except the priest, who stares at his goblet like he's considering smiting the wine itself. The laughter fades, replaced by murmurs and side glances. You sip your drink, pretending to understand the rhythm of this strange performance. Courtly love, they call. It's the art of flirting without consequences, of admiring without touching, of writing poetry about someone you'll never be allowed to kiss. You watch as a knight kneels before a lady, offering a flower that's seen better days. She accepts it with the solemn grace of a queen, though her eyes dart toward her husband across the room, who's currently trying to get a roasted quail unstuck from his beard. You wonder how many of these romances ever actually stayed poetic, and how many ended in whispered scandals buried under a pile of denials. Historians still debate whether this love was genuine or just an elaborate social game designed to distract from the sheer boredom of castle life. You attempt conversation with a young scribe seated nearby. He's copying notes about tonight's feast, each word neat and precise. The medieval version of a social media post, except every mistake requires scraping the parchment clean. He tells you, in a tone too serious for comfort, that his ink is made from gallnuts and iron, the very stuff of oak and rust, permanent as memory, he says, which makes you wonder if the gossip being recorded tonight will outlive everyone in this room. Probably. Paper doesn't blush when the music starts a slow, mournful tune played on a lute and Rebecca, invited, or perhaps ordered, to dance. The lady who takes your hand smiles sweetly, her eyes glinting like polished steel. "Don't step on my gown," she whispers. You do. Twice. The nobles nearby chuckle politely, the same way modern audiences might laugh when someone drops their phone during a concert. You mumble an apology and attempt to follow the steps, but it's less dancing and more strategic stumbling. You finally bow as the song ends, nearly colliding with a servant carrying a tray of roasted pheasant. A bit of gravy lands on your sleeve. No one says anything, but you can feel the judgment radiating like heat from a forge. Dinner drags on for hours, between courses of venison and pottage. The conversations twist like vines. Someone accuses another of cheating at dice. Another brags about a cousin who met a centaur claimed to. You overhear a debate about whether the stars control the humors of the body or just the fates of kings. A bishop insists that certain days are unlucky for travel, while the local lord declares them unlucky only for the poor. You sip more wine, though it's more vinegar than vintage, and nod along, pretending to understand. The truth is, medieval science is an unpredictable mix of logic and legend. The fringe idea of the night. A scholar swears that you can tell a man's temperament by how his hair curls. You run a hand through yours, half amused, half worried. By the time dessert, a riser platter of candied almonds and something that might once have been fruit. You're feeling both dazed and sticky. The air is thick with heat and human breath. You notice how everyone's eyes flick occasionally toward the throne, where the lord of this hall sits quietly, a small smile tugging at the edge of his lips. He hasn't said a word all evening, but his silence carries more power than a dozen proclamations. When he finally rises, the room stills like water before a storm. His toast is simple, to loyalty. Everyone echoes it, though the word seems to mean something different to each person. You raise your cup and hope that's enough. As the feast winds down, you're led to a smaller chamber, a place where the nobles loosen their tongues and their collars. Here, the air smells less of roast meat and more of wine-soaked secrets. A minstrel plucks lazy notes from his lute, singing about love lost and found, while two courtiers argue softly about taxes. You listen, realizing that even here, among the silk and gold, anxiety is as common as dirt. No one truly relaxes. They simply perform better. You think about the peasants outside, sleeping under coarse blankets, unaware that their lords are arguing over which cousin gets which slice of land. There's a certain irony to it all. The higher you climb in this world, the less freedom you have. Every smile hides a motive. Every gift is a debt in disguise. You excuse yourself, claiming fatigue, though truthfully you just need air. The corridor outside is cold and silent, a relief after the noise. Your footsteps echo softly on the stone. Somewhere far below, servants are cleaning up the mess, scrubbing plates and sweeping bones off the floor. For all the pomp of the evening, it always ends the same way. A few broken goblets, a few bruised egos, and the lingering smell of smoke and wine. You pause by a window, looking out over the dark courtyard. Torches flicker along the walls, and the wind carries faint laughter from the town below. The moon hangs heavy and pale, as if tired of watching humans play the same games century after century. For a moment, you think of your own world: electric lights, coffee, showers, and feel a pang of longing. But there's also something strangely beautiful about this age, brutal though it is. The honesty of its hardship, the rawness of its joy, the way life and death sit so close together, like two old friends who've learned to share a bench. When you finally return to the hall, most of the nobles have drifted away. Only a few linger, talking quietly, their faces soft in the candlelight. One of them, a wary-looking knight, with eyes like storm clouds, catches your gaze. Strange, isn't it? he says, voice low. All this gold, all this ceremony, and still, everyone's afraid. You nod, not sure how to reply. He gives a small smile. You'll learn, he adds, turning away, or you won't. Either way, the court remembers. You slip out before dawn, the last of the candles burning low behind you. Outside, the air is crisp, clean in a way it never is inside those thick walls. You pull your cloak tighter and breathe deep, realizing that survival here isn't just about food or warmth, it's about reading the room. The tone, the silence between sentences. You survived one night at court. That's more than most newcomers can say. But tomorrow, the gossip will begin again, and you'll need to dance a little better, bow a little lower, and maybe, just maybe, keep your shoes out of the gravy. The church bells begin before the sun even rises, deep and heavy, echoing through the fog like someone knocking on the sky. You wake to the sound, heart thudding, not entirely sure if it's calling people to prayer or warning of another disaster. Either way, it means you have to move. The village stirs slowly, a few shivering figures pulling on wool cloaks and trudging toward the chapel. The world feels smaller here, quieter yet in its silence. There's a kind of weight, as if faith itself presses down on everything and everyone. You follow the crowd, trying to look like you belong, though the smell of incense and candle wax hits you like a wall as soon as you step inside. Inside, the air is dim and smoky, filled with the murmur of Latin prayers you can't quite follow. The priest stands before the altar, his voice droning rhythmically, words more ancient than most of the building's stones. Candles flicker, throwing ghosts of light onto the walls, where saints gaze down from cracked frescoes. Their painted eyes follow you no matter where you sit. You kneel when everyone else kneels, stand when they stand, cross yourself half a beat too late. The floor is cold beneath your knees, the air thick with devotion and a faint undertone of fear. Historians still argue whether religion in the Middle Ages was more a comfort or a control mechanism. But sitting here, it's hard to separate the two. Faith is everywhere, stitched into banners, whispered over bread, carved into every doorpost. It's the thread that binds this world together, and also the chain that keeps it from changing too quickly. People believe because belief is survival. Without it, how else would you explain plague, famine, or the Lord's taxes? It's easier to imagine divine tests than random cruelty. A young monk walks past, carrying a bundle of scrolls bound with twine. His sandals whisper across the floor, his face serene in a way that makes you suspect he hasn't been outside in a while. He looks too peaceful for a world this brutal. Later, you find him in the cloister garden, tending to a few wilted herbs that are supposed to cure everything from headaches to heartbreak. He tells you that the abbey's library holds over 200 manuscripts, each one copied by hand, each word labored over by candlelight. 200 doesn't sound like much, until you realize it's the closest thing this world has to the internet. Information doesn't spread here, it crawls. You ask if he's ever read something that made him question things, and he smiles faintly, as if that's a dangerous question to ask. We all question, he says, but some of us write the answers down, and some of us pray the questions away. He hands you a sprig of rosemary for protection, though whether it's from demons or disease, he doesn't say. The air smells faintly of smoke again. You wonder if it's the incense from earlier, or if someone, somewhere, is burning heresy tonight. Because make no mistake, faith here isn't gentle. It's fierce, fiery, and sometimes fatal. You've heard the whispers already. A woman in the next village accused of witchcraft because her cow gave birth to a two-headed calf. Another man beaten for saying the rain comes from clouds instead of God's tears. The line between superstition and sin is drawn with a shaky hand, and it shifts depending on who's holding the ink. The church offers salvation, but it also holds the power to damn you for sneezing the wrong way. The local priest is friendly enough, though his smile never quite reaches his eyes. Over a mug of watered wine, he explains that confession is the soul's way of cleaning itself. You nod, pretending to agree, but when he asks if you'd like to confess, you panic a little. What would you even say? That you're from the future? That you've seen machines fly and lights that never die? That you don't know half the prayers everyone else seems to have memorized? Instead, you mumble something about impure thoughts and pride. He nods gravely, gives you 3 Avenue Marias, and warns you to avoid temptation. Then later, you see him sneaking glances at the brewer's daughter. Some things, it seems, are timeless. Outside, the bells toll again. This time, the sound isn't sacred, it's a summons. A small crowd gathers near the square, where a wooden platform has been hastily built. The air is thick with unease. A man in rough clothes stands in the center, hands bound, eyes darting. The priest announces that he's been caught spreading heretical ideas, that he claimed the earth moves around the sun. You freeze, realizing you're witnessing the cost of thinking too early. The crowd murmurs, some in horror, others in agreement. Then the torches come out. The man screams something, maybe defiance, maybe prayer, but the wind carries his words away. You can't watch. You turn and walk, though the smell of burning wood and flesh follows you for miles. The medieval world doesn't forgive curiosity easily. It demands belief, total and unquestioning. And yet, even here, small rebellions flicker like sparks. Scholars hiding in monasteries debate forbidden books. Peasants whisper charms and prayers that sound suspiciously pagan. Women keep herbs in pouches for luck, though everyone knows they do far more than that. The church may rule the body, but the soul still finds its own paths. Later, you visit a cathedral under construction. The workers move like ants, hauling stone and timber, guided by master builders who seem part mathematician, part magician. The walls rise higher than reason, arching toward heaven in a geometry of devotion. You crane your neck to look up at the stained glass, being fitted tiny shards of colored light depicting saints and sinners alike. It's impossible not to feel awe. These people, living in a world where comfort is rare and death is common, pour decades, sometimes lifetimes, into creating something that will outlast them all. You can almost hear their faith in every hammer blow. As you watch, a mason tells you that each gargoyle has a purpose: to ward off evil spirits and keep rain from washing the sins off the roof too quickly. You glance at one, its tongue lolling, its eyes wild, and wonder who decided ugliness could be holy. He shrugs when you ask. Maybe God likes jokes, he says. You laugh, but he, DOESN, single quotes, to night falls, and the cathedral bells echo again. You find yourself sitting near a campfire outside the walls, where travelers huddle close. One of them, a wandering friar, speaks softly about his journeys. He's seen relics, a thorn from Christ's crown, a vial of Mary's tears, bones that glow faintly in the dark. You can't tell if he believes what he's saying, or if he just knows people want to believe. Faith here isn't always about truth, it's about comfort. In a world where life is short and brutal, a story that promises paradise is the sweetest currency there is. Someone else near. The fire mutters that half those relics are fake, that merchants sell saint bones carved from sheep. The friar bristles but says nothing. Instead, he stares into the flames and murmurs that even a false relic can inspire true faith. You think about that for a long while, Maybe belief isn't about what's real, it's about what keeps you going when everything else falls apart. Later that night, you lie awake, listening to the wind scrape against the wooden shutters. You think of how fear and faith walk hand in hand here. Every illness, every storm, every failed harvest is both a punishment and a test. The church explains everything, and that explanation becomes the truth. And yet, beneath that blanket of obedience, you sense something else, a quiet rebellion, a yearning for knowledge. It's in the monks who secretly translate Greek texts, in the alchemists who chase impossible formulas, in the mothers who whisper old pagan lullabies to their children. Belief is never uniform. It bends and flexes in the shadows. In the morning, the priest invites you to join a procession. The villagers carry candles, singing hymns as they walk through fields still wet with dew. At the edge of town, they stop to bless the crops, sprinkling holy water that glints like glass in the sunlight. You notice how the people's faces soften as they sing, how the priest's voice trembles slightly with emotion. Maybe this is what faith was always meant to be, not fear, not control, but connection. The earth, the sky, the unseen, all held together by shared hope. But the moment passes. You overhear two villagers whispering that someone didn't attend mass last week. They trade glances, voices low, words sharp. Suspicion blooms easily here. You remember the man on the platform and feel a chill crawl up your spine. Belief gives comfort, but it also breeds watchfulness. Everyone is both believer and enforcer, saint and snitch. By midday, the sky turns grey. Thunder rumbles, distant but growing. Someone mutters that God is angry again, and people hurry to their homes. You stay behind, watching the rain start to fall in soft sheets over the church roof. For a moment, you imagine you can see the gargoyles smiling. The bells ring once more, their echoes swallowed by the storm. Faith, you realize, is the heartbeat of this world. It fills the silence between famine and feast, between life and death. It comforts, controls, redeems, and destroys. And as the rain washes the dust from the stones, you can't help but think of the monk's words that we all question, but not all of us write the answers down. You wonder which you'd be if you stayed here long enough. The first sound you hear is laughter, not the clean, polite laughter of nobles at court, but something rougher, louder, human. You follow it through a maze of narrow streets, until the smell of ale hits you full in the face. It's dark out, but the town is alive in a way daylight never allows. Lanterns swing above doorways, music spills from open shutters, and somewhere, someone is loudly losing at dice. You've arrived at the medieval nightlifer, mix of celebration, danger, and exhaustion wrapped in smoke and song. You push open the door of the nearest tavern and immediately feel like you've stepped into another universe. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of roasted meat, sour beer, sweat, and something that might once have been cheese. A fire roars in the hearth, half for warmth, half for light. People crowd the long wooden tables, shouting to be heard over the din. Tankards slam, chairs scrape, a dog barks, and a lute struggles bravely against the noise. You find a corner seat and sit, trying to look casual while you take it all in. There's no pretense here. No velvet robes or delicate etiquette, just survival disguised as celebration. A woman with a grin sharper than her dagger slams a mug down in front of you. "First one's for courage," she says, before disappearing into the crowd. You lift the mug, eyeing the froth suspiciously. It smells like barley and regret. Still, you take a sip, and the liquid hits you like a hammer, bitter, warm, and surprisingly smoky. Around you, the room sways with laughter and song. A man at the next table tells a story about wrestling a boar barehanded. No one believes him, but everyone listens anyway. Another brags that he once served a duke, though from the looks of him, it might have been as the duke's boot cleaner. Historians still argue whether taverns were truly the heart of medieval social life, or just the lungs, places where people went to breathe out their frustrations and inhale forgetfulness. Either way, you can feel it. This is where the real world happens. The day belongs to the church and the lords, but the night, this noisy, chaotic, smoky night, belongs to everyone else. A bard begins to sing, his voice surprisingly smooth, despite the smell of ale on his breath. The song tells of a knight who fell in love with a miller's daughter, only to be outwitted by her in the end. The crowd roars with laughter, stomping feet in rhythm. The bard winks at you mid-verse, as if to say, don't take any of it too seriously. You smile, realizing that humor here isn't just entertainment, it's armor. In a world this hard, laughter is rebellion. You glance around and notice the faces, farmers with hands rough from work, travelers coated in dust, apprentices who look barely old enough to drink. There's even a monk in the corner who'd pulled low, nursing a mug like it's medicine. Everyone's tired, but no one wants to go home yet. The night is a brief escape from rules and expectations. Even the serving girl moves with a kind of weary joy, balancing trays and insults with equal skill. She shoves a man's hand away, not missing a beat in her stride. You wonder how many times she's done that before. Your second drink comes uninvited. The woman with the dagger sits across from you now, eyes bright in the firelight. She asks where you're from, and when you hesitate, she smirks. Don't worry, no one hears from where they say they are. She tells you she's a merchant's widow, though the way her fingers toy with her knife suggests her late husband's fate might have involved sharp edges. You ask what she does now. She grins. Whatever I must. The night grows louder, the room warmer. Someone starts a dice game in the corner. Coins clatter, arguments spark. The bard's tune shifts from love to war, then back again, and people start to dance. It's not graceful, more of a stomping shuffle, but it's real. You find yourself dragged into the movement, hands clapping, feet uncertain. Someone spills ale down your back. You laugh anyway. It's impossible not to. Then the door bursts open. The wind rushes in, carrying the smell of rain and horses. 3 soldiers enter, armor gleaming dully in the firelight. The crowd goes quiet, just for a heartbeat. Soldiers mean trouble, taxes, conscription, or worse. The tallest of them surveys the room, his eyes landing on a man near the hearth. You, he says, voice flat, you owe the Lord 3 weeks' rent. The man protests something about crop failure, but the soldier isn't listening. The tavern's laughter dies, replaced by tension thick enough to chew. The woman across from you leans in and whispers, best keep your head down. You do. The soldiers drag the man out, their boots thudding against the floorboards. Outside, the rain starts falling harder, washing away the sounds of his shouting. When the door closes again, the silence lingers. Then someone coughs, someone laughs nervously, and the bard strikes a new chord, louder, brighter. The night resumes. It always does. Later, when the crowd thins, you step outside. The rain has turned the street into a mirror, reflecting the glow from tavern windows. A group of drunk men stumble past, singing a song about lost love and bad ale. One of them offers you his hat, then promptly forgets he ever owned it. You walk toward the edge of town, where the sound fades into the steady rhythm of rain on cobblestone. The smell of wood smoke clings to your clothes. In the distance, you hear another kind of nightlife, the quiet of the poor. Families huddled around dying fires, whispering stories to children who can't sleep. Laughter here is softer, but it's still there. You pass a house where a woman hums a lullaby older than any church song, her voice a fragile thread in the dark. For all its harshness, this world still knows how to find joy in scraps. When you return to the tavern, the fire is lower, but the mood lighter again. A new game has started, something involving pebbles, guesses, and plenty of cheating. You watch, fascinated by how quickly the tension melts away. People here have short memories by necessity. Tomorrow might bring war, famine, or plague, but tonight there's music and ale, and that's enough. A young man joins you, calling himself Tomas the Tinker. His laugh is infectious, his stories half believable. He swears he's seen a ghost near the abbey that walks only at full moon. You ask if he's afraid, and he grins. Afraid of ghosts? No, afraid of running out of ale, maybe. Then, more quietly, he adds, truth is, the living are scarier. You both drink to that. The conversation drifts, as all good tavern talk does. Someone argues that dragons once lived in the northern hills. Someone else insists they still do. Historians would love this half-rumor, half-wishful thinking. You mention your own world by accident, something about electric lights, and Tomas blinks. Magic? He asks. You smile and nod. Something like that. He slaps your back, pleased. Well, I'll drink to your magic world, then. Hours blur together. A fistfight breaks out, but it ends with laughter. Someone collapses under a table. The bard switches to a slower tune, his voice a lullaby now, soft and sorrowful. You realize how fragile this happiness is, how every laugh here carries the weight of what waits outside. Still, they laugh, they sing, they live by the time you finally step outside again. The storm has passed. The sky is streaked with the first grey hints of dawn. You walk through the empty streets, puddles glimmering like spilled starlight. Somewhere, a rooster crows. The tavern door creaks behind you as the last of the night's songs fades into memory. You think about how these nights must have been the only escape for so many the peasants, the travelers, the dreamers. For a few hours, they could forget their place, their hunger, their fears. Music, ale, and laughter were medicine stronger than any the barber surgeon could mix. And maybe that's the secret of the medieval night. It wasn't just about pleasure, it was about endurance. Historians still debate whether medieval taverns were dens of sin or sanctuaries of humanity. Standing here, soaked in the scent of smoke and dawn, you know the answer is both. The night belonged to everyone, the noble hiding from politics, the peasant hiding from hunger, the thief hiding from justice. All found the same fleeting peace beneath the same flickering firelight. You turn one last time to look at the tavern. The door swings gently, as if waving farewell. Inside, the embers glow faintly, refusing to die just yet. You smile. Maybe that's what people have always done, kept the fire going, even when the world outside feels colder than it should. You wake to the soft murmur of distant bells and the lowing of cattle somewhere beyond the town wall. The world outside the window is washed in pale morning light, grey and gold bleeding together like watercolor. The tavern from the night before feels like a half-remembered dream, now laughter fading into echoes. The smell of ale and smoke clinging faintly to your clothes. The innkeeper's daughter moves quietly through the common room, sweeping ashes from the hearth. Her motions are unhurried, practiced, almost reverent. The noise of night has turned into the silence of dawn. You step outside and the air is crisp, smelling faintly of earth and rain. A thin mist lingers along the cobbled road, curling around your boots. Townsfolk are already at work, traders arranging goods, women scrubbing wooden buckets at the well, children running errands with more enthusiasm than precision. Somewhere a rooster crows again, late but persistent. The medieval morning isn't peaceful so much as steady. Life here is not about beginnings or endings, it's about continuation. You pass a baker's shop, drawn by the warmth radiating from its open door. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of yeast and smoke. A woman with flour in her hair is pulling loaves from a clay oven, her hands moving quickly despite the heat. She notices your stare and offers a crooked smile. "First batch is always the best," she says, handing you a small uneven roll. It's hard and rough on the outside, but the inside is soft, steaming. The taste is simple grain, salt, effort. You realize how much meaning can hide in such small things. A wagon creaks past, piled high with hay. The driver nods at you, half asleep but still steering. Horses snort, their breath visible in the cold air. Somewhere in the distance, a hammer rings against anvil, steady, rhythmic. The blacksmith's day begins early. You follow the sound until you reach his forge. The man inside is built like a mountain, his skin glistening with sweat, though the morning is cool. Sparks fly each time he strikes, lighting the dim shop like fleeting stars. You watch him shape a horseshoe, the iron glowing red, then orange, then dulling as he quenches it in water. Steam rises, hissing. He glances up and gives you a curt nod. "Work's never done," he says, voice low but kind. You ask if he enjoys it. He chuckles. "Enjoy, not the word I'd use, but it feeds my children. That's enough." His words linger with you. In this world, satisfaction doesn't come from pleasure. It comes from purpose. Every hammer strike, every loaf of bread, every mended roof is a small defiance against chaos. You continue walking, past the edge of town where fields stretch toward the horizon. The land looks peaceful, but you know how fragile that peace really is. Crops depend on weather on luck, and luck is rarely kind. A farmer waves at you from his plow, his oxen trudging through heavy soil. His wife follows behind, scattering seeds from a woven basket. You can see how much they depend on one another, every gesture synchronized, every breath shared. They don't speak, but they understand each other perfectly. The road bends toward the river, and you stop there to rest. The water is calm, reflecting the pale sky. A fisherman stands knee-deep in the current, patient, still as a statue. He nods when you greet him but doesn't speak, eyes fixed on his line. You watch in silence, feeling the rhythm of the moment, the slow flow of time, the soft hum of the world breathing around you. When he finally pulls a fish from the water, he handles it gently, almost respectfully, before dropping it into a bucket. You wonder how many mornings he's spent this way, how many more he will. A group of children runs past, laughing, wooden swords clashing. One of them stops and asks if you're a traveler. When you say yes, they circle you instantly, eager for stories. You tell them you've seen cities where towers touch the clouds and carriages move without horses. Their eyes widen, half in disbelief, half in hope. They don't ask if it's true, they just want to imagine that it could be. Imagination here is a form of wealth, rarer than gold. The sound of a bell drifts from the church tower, deep and resonant. People begin to move toward it, some slowly, some with purpose. You follow at a distance. The church is small, its walls patched with age, its wooden door groaning on its hinges. Inside, the air smells of wax and stone. Candles flicker along the altar, throwing trembling light on the faces gathered in the pews. The priest speaks softly, his words lost in echo, but his tone carries something both weary and gentle. It's not the grandeur of faith that fills the room, but its endurance, the quiet belief that life must mean something, even if no one knows what. After the service, you stand outside, watching people disperse. Some cross themselves before leaving, others exchange quiet greetings. A man kneels by the church wall, carving something into the stone. You glance closer and realize it's a date, perhaps a memorial, perhaps a promise. Every mark here means something to someone. The town feels alive not because of what it builds, but because of what it remembers. The afternoon brings a shift in the air. Clouds gather, soft but heavy. Traders shout prices in the market square, their voices mingling with the clatter of carts and the bleating of goats. The smells, spices, manure, roasted onions, swirl together in the heat. A juggler performs near the fountain, his colored balls flashing in the light. Children cheer, dogs bark. Someone starts a drumbeat with a stick on a barrel. It's chaos, but it's beautiful chaos. You stop by a stall selling candles shaped like saints. The old woman behind it squints at you, then asks for prayer or protection. You hesitate, then say, both. She nods, knowingly, wrapping the candle in coarse cloth. Same answer everyone gives, she murmurs. You pay with a small coin, the metal cool in your hand. In this world, even light must be bought carefully. As evening approaches, the sky darkens into bruised purple. Smoke rises from chimneys, shutters close one by one. The market quiets, replaced by the distant hum of supper pots clanging, voices calling, laughter drifting across the square. You sit by the fountain, watching the last of the daylight fade. The water catches what's left of the sun, turning gold for a heartbeat before going black. A man sits beside you, dressed in the rough cloak of a traveler. His beard is silver, his eyes sharp. He doesn't speak for a while, just watches the sky. Finally, he says, "It's strange, isn't it, how the same sun sets for kings and beggars alike?" You nod. He sighs. That's the only fair thing in this world. Then he stands, adjusts his pack, and disappears into the growing dark. The inn welcomes you again that night, though it feels different now. The noise has softened, the crowd smaller. The bard from before sits near the hearth, tuning his lute. The dagger woman from your first night waves at you from across the room, her grin the same as ever. "Still here," she teases. "The world's big, traveler. Don't get stuck in one corner." You smile. Maybe this corner has more stories than most. She laughs and raises her cup. Fair enough. You join her, sharing a meal of stew and bread. She tells you about the people she's met: the thief who became a monk, the nun who ran away to join a troupe of actors, the nobleman who lost his title and found peace selling candles. Every story sounds half myth, half memory. Maybe that's how stories survive here, not as history, but as something truer. When the bard begins to play, the room falls silent. His song is slow, mournful. It tells of a traveler who walked too far and forgot where home was. You feel the ache in every note. The dagger woman listens without smiling now, her eyes distant. When the song ends, no one claps. They just sit quietly for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Then someone refills a mug, someone coughs, and life resumes. You step outside before midnight. The moon hangs low, half hidden behind clouds. The town sleeps, but the world still hums the whisper of wind through thatched roofs, the creak of wooden signs, the steady drip from gutters. You walk toward the edge of the fields again, where the road vanishes into darkness. The air smells of damp earth and smoke. Somewhere an owl hoots, distant but near enough to feel. You think of the blacksmith's hammer, the baker's oven, the farmer's plow. Every sound, every scent, Every heartbeat of this place is part of the same rhythm of persistence. The medieval world was never quiet, but it was never truly loud either. It lived in the in-between, in the steady pulse of people doing what they must, day after day. As you stand beneath the moon, you realize that maybe that's the true beauty of it all, not the grandeur of castles or the terror of wars, but the simple, stubborn continuation of life. A world built not on progress, but on endurance. The same fires are lit, the same songs sung, the same bread baked, and through it all, the same hope flickers quietly that tomorrow will come, and they will face it together. When you finally return to the inn, the fire has burned low. The bard has fallen asleep beside his instrument. The woman with the dagger is gone, her seat empty but her cup still half full. You sit where she was, listening to the faint crackle of embers. Outside, the bells toll, again distant, soft, endless. You close your eyes and breathe in the last of the smoke, the warmth, the life, and for a moment, you feel it completely, the strange, fragile miracle of simply being alive in a world that shouldn't have survived, but did. The castle looms ahead like a waking dream, rising out of the fog with its jagged spires and heavy stone walls. You've seen it before from a distance, a grey silhouette against the horizon. But standing here at the gates is another thing entirely. The air feels colder, quieter. Even the birds seem hesitant to cross the boundary. The guards eye you warily from beneath their helmets, spears glinting in the half-light. You tell them you're expected, though you both know that isn't true. After a long pause, one waves you through. Inside, the courtyard bustles with activities, stable hands leading nervous horses, servants carrying baskets of bread and jugs of wine, and somewhere above, the echo of laughter that doesn't sound entirely joyful. The castle feels alive but uneasy, like a great creature shifting in its sleep. You move through it slowly, boots clicking against wet stone, the scent of oil, metal, and something faintly floral, maybe lavender, from a lady's chambers clings to the air. A young page greets you, bowing low. His voice cracks as he says, "My lord is in the great hall." You follow him through corridors lined with tapestries depicting battles that may or may not have happened. One shows a knight kneeling before a queen, another a dragon writhing beneath a man's sword. Historians still argue whether the beasts were metaphors or memories, but in the flicker of torchlight, it's easy to imagine that once they might have been real. The great hall opens before you, vast and echoing, its ceiling vanishing into shadow. At the center, a long wooden table stretches nearly the length of the room. Nobles sit along it, their faces pale in the candlelight. Their laughter rings too sharp, their smiles held too long. The lord of the castle, an aging man with eyes like frost and hands to still, rises as you approach. "A traveler," he says, voice steady but weary. "We have not had one in some time. Come, sit. Tell us what news the roads carry." You sit, and a servant places a goblet before you. The wine smells rich, sweet, and dangerous. Around you, the nobles resume their conversations, whispers of trade, marriage, and war, woven together like a fine net. The women's gowns shimmer with threads of gold, their sleeves long enough to sweep crumbs from the floor. The men wear doublets so tight you wonder how they breathe. Fashion here is less about comfort and more about survival armor made of silk and smiles. A musician plucks a lute in the corner, his song soft but tense. You take a sip of wine, and the lord leans toward you. "Tell me," he says, "what do people beyond these walls say of the king?" You choose your words carefully, saying only that the people hope for peace. He chuckles, low and humorless. "Peace," he murmurs. an admirable illusion. He gestures toward a pair of courtiers, arguing near the fire. One wears blue, the other red colors, marking allegiance as surely as banners. Their voices rise and fall like waves. They speak of loyalty. The Lord says quietly, but what they mean is power. You nod, though your throat feels tight. Every word spoken here is a weapon. You've wandered through villages where people fight for bread. Here, they fight for words, for glances, for advantage. The meal begins. Servants carry in roasted pheasant, spiced apples, thick loaves of bread. The smell is overwhelming: meat, herbs, honey, smoke. You eat slowly, watching. A jester tumbles across the floor, bells jingling, his grin painted wide. He mocks a noble's speech, mimics the Lord's voice, dances on the edge of danger. The court roars with laughter, but you notice the Lord's fingers tighten around his goblet. The jester bows too low, his smile flickering. You wonder if he'll still be laughing tomorrow. As the evening deepens, talk turns to rumors. Someone mentions a neighboring baron plotting rebellion. Another swears a comet has appeared in the night sky, a sign. They say that kings will fall. Historians still argue whether celestial omens ever influenced medieval politics. You think absently, but it's clear the people back then believed they did. Belief, after all, is its own form of truth. You excuse yourself from the table and wander through the hall's side doors. The corridors are quieter here, lit by single torches that throw long, trembling shadows. You pass portraits of past rulers, their eyes following you with unnerving intensity. Some look proud, others tired, all look haunted. You pause before one, a woman in crimson, her hand resting on a closed book. The plaque beneath her name has been scratched away. You wonder what story was erased, and who wanted it gone. Further down the corridor, you hear voices. Two servants stand by a half-open door, whispering. You catch only fragments. The lady's letter, burned before dawn. The night saw everything. They fall silent when they notice you, bow quickly, and disappear. You look through the door they left ajar. Inside, a woman sits at a desk, quill poised above parchment. She's young, with hair like autumn leaves, and eyes sharp enough to cut through silence. She looks up, startled, then relaxes. "You're not from here," she says softly. It's not a question. You nod, and she gestures for you to enter. The room smells of ink and wax. "I write the letters no one wants written," she explains. "Condolences, confessions, sometimes threats. Every castle needs a scribe willing to lie beautifully." She smiles faintly. "Do you know what the hardest thing to write is?" You shake your head. "A truth that sounds like a lie." Her gaze drifts to the window. "Out there," she says, "people think the castle is power, but it's really fear in stone form. Every wall is built to keep something out, or someone in." You ask why she stays. She shrugs. "Where else is there to go? Even if I left, I'd still be writing for someone else." Her words linger as you leave. By the time you return to the main hall, the feast has turned into something wilder. Laughter has curdled into shouting, goblets overturned, dogs gnawing on discarded bones. A noblewoman weeps quietly in the corner, while two men argue over a spilled drink. The Lord still sits at the head of the table, unmoving, watching everything. His face gives nothing away. You slip outside into the courtyard, needing air. The night is cool, stars scattered above like spilled salt. The moonlight glints on the armor of the guards, who stand motionless as statues. Somewhere, an owl hoots again. You walk toward the stables, where the smell of hay and horses mixes with the faint tang of iron. A boy sits on a stool, mending a saddle by lantern light. "You're not from here either," he says without looking up. You ask how he knows. He shrugs. You walk like you still expect roads to be safe. His words hit harder than he intends. You ask him what life in the castle is like. He hesitates, then says, quiet when it's loud, loud when it's quiet. Nobody sleeps easy here. You ask why he stays. My mother's cook, he says, simply. If she leaves, we starve. If we stay, maybe we don't. He looks up, eyes tired beyond his years. That's how it is for most of us. The castle bells toll once, slow and deep. Somewhere inside, a door slams. The boy stiffens. They're meeting again, he whispers. The council? You glance toward the main tower, where lights flicker behind narrow windows. The air feels heavy now, charged. You can almost hear the low murmur of voices, the scrape of chairs, the crackle of fire. Decisions are being made up, their decisions, that will ripple far beyond these walls. You stay in the shadows, listening to the night breathe. The boy finishes his work and disappears into the stables. You sit on the low wall, watching your breath mist in the air. For a moment, the world is still. Then the castle door creaks open, and a figure emerges, a man in fine clothes, his face pale. He pauses, glancing round, then slips something small and dark into his cloak. When he sees you, he freezes. For a long second, you just stare at each other. Then he nods once, curtly, and hurries into the dark. You don't follow. Whatever secret he carries, it isn't yours to uncover. The medieval world thrives on half-truths, on rumors that grow teeth. You've seen enough to know that sometimes survival means pretending not to notice. By the time you return inside, the hall is nearly empty. The fire has burned low, casting everything in a red glow. The Lord sits alone now, staring into the flames. He looks smaller somehow, his power dimmed by the quiet. You hesitate, then step forward. Do you ever tire of it? You ask. His eyes flick toward you, sharp and cold. Of what? This, you say softly. The games, the watching, the wait. He leans back, lips curling into something like a smile. You think I chose it. None of us do. Power chooses, and once it does, it doesn't let go. He looks back at the fire, but maybe you already know that. You leave him there, his face half lit, half lost in shadow. Outside, dawn is breaking again. The sky blushes pink above the towers, and a new day begins. Servants stir, carts roll in from the fields, and life resumes as if the night's secrets never happened. You walk away from the castle, the road stretching ahead. Behind you, the bells ring once more, steady, indifferent. You don't look back. The road from the castle winds through the lowlands, curving between meadows still slick with dew. Dawn creeps across the sky in streaks of grey and rose, and the mist clings to everything, trees, carts, even your cloak. The air feels heavy, almost too quiet, until a distant cough breaks it, rough and wet. You turn toward the sound and see a cluster of cottages, smoke curling from their chimneys. A village, smaller than the ones you've passed before. There's something uneasy about it, though. The silence isn't the sleepy kind, it's the listening kind. As you draw closer, you notice the doors are shut tight, shutters latched. A dog barks once, and then falls silent. The road, usually busy with carts and chatter, is empty except for a single cart overturned in the ditch. You can smell it before you see it, the unmistakable sour-sweet stench of decay. And then you understand. A body lies near the well, covered loosely with a blanket. A hand juts out, pale and stiff. Your stomach twists. The blanket bears a painted mark, a crude black cross. The air around you seems to still even further, as though the world itself is holding its breath. A woman appears from a nearby doorway, her face wrapped in cloth. She stares at you through wide, red-rimmed eyes. "Don't come close," she says, her voice hoarse. "It's taken half the village already." You nod, stepping back instinctively. "The plague?" You ask. She laughs, a dry, broken sound. "What else could it be? God's punishment, some say. But I think it's just the world rotting faster than we can live." You ask if anyone's helping. She shakes her head. "The Lord's men blocked the roads. They won't let anyone in or out," said it's mercy. She pulls the cloth tighter around her mouth. "But mercy shouldn't smell like this." Behind her, a bell tolls a soft, uncertain sound from the small chapel on the hill. A thin line of smoke curls from behind it, and for a moment, you think it might be incense. Then you realize it's from a pyre. The wind shifts, bringing the acrid tang of burning wood and flesh. You feel the world tilt slightly under your feet. Historians still argue whether the medieval plague spread more by flea-bitten rats or through the air itself. But standing here, it hardly matters. Fear spreads faster than any disease. It crawls into bones, makes every cough sound fatal. Every shadow look like a grave. You walk on, through the edge of the village. Every few steps, you pass another black cross painted on a door. Some are fresh, glistening with oil, others faded by rain. At one cottage, a boy sits on the step, hugging a ragged toy. His eyes are glassy but alive. You crouch beside him, keeping your distance. "Where are your parents?" He looks toward the closed door. "Inside," he whispers. You want to say something comforting, but the words don't come. He turns the toy over in his hands and adds softly, "I'm waiting for them to wake up." You leave before he can ask you to stay. Beyond the village, the road widens into fields left untended. Crops rot in their furrows, heavy with mildew. Crows gather in the silence, their cries sharp and greedy. The world feels emptied, as if time itself has slowed to a crawl. The plague hasn't just taken lives, it's taken rhythm. Even the wind seems cautious now. By midday, you find a camp of survivors near the edge of the forest. They've built makeshift tents from torn cloth and branches. Smoke rises from a small fire, though no one sits too close to it. The people look hollow-eyed, wrapped in layers though the day is warm. A priest stands among them, reciting prayers from memory, his voice trembling between faith and exhaustion. You approach carefully. He glances up and nods, too tired to question your presence. "You should move on," he says, voice raspy. "The sick come here at night. They think the woods will save them. The woods save no one." He crosses himself. But what else can they do? No doctor will come. The towns burn bridges to keep the dead from crossing. He lowers his voice. Historians still argue whether isolation was mercy or madness. I think it was both. You ask him why he stays. He smiles faintly. "Someone must bury the ones who believed I could help them." A shout interrupts him. A young man stumbles into the camp, clutching his arm. "They're burning the village," he gasps. "The Lord's men, they say. It's to stop the spread." He sinks to his knees, shaking. The priest closes his eyes, whispering a prayer. No one moves to stop the flames. There's nothing left to save. You stay until dusk, helping where you can, passing water, wrapping bandages, listening. There's a woman who insists she saw a hooded figure walking through the fields, sowing black dust from his hands. "A child," says the rats whisper when the moon is full. You realize these stories aren't madness, they're coping mechanisms. When death comes too fast to understand, the mind invents poetry to survive it. As night falls, the forest fills with the sound of insects. The air feels thick, feverish. You lie beneath a tree, staring at the stars. They look unchanged, indifferent. Somewhere behind you, someone coughs a dry rattle of a sound. You pull your cloak tighter, though the chill isn't from cold. In the middle of the night, you wake to the smell of smoke. The campfire has died down, but something else burns in the distance. You climb a small rise and see the glow of flames licking the horizon. The village is gone now, a smear of orange and ash. The priest's silhouette stands at the edge of the trees, hands clasped, unmoving. You don't go to him. There's nothing left to say. By morning, only the ashes remain. You continue down the road, every step heavy with the quiet knowledge that this world has always been one bad harvest or one stray cough away from collapse. You pass through another town where people wear sprigs of rosemary pinned to their clothes, believing the scent wards off disease. They hold flowers to their faces, muttering prayers between sneezes. You catch a glimpse of the irony, trying to hide from death behind perfume, but you can't blame them. You'd do the same. You stop at a crossroads where a merchant wagon has been abandoned. The canvas cover flaps in the wind, revealing crates of spices spilled across the ground. Pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg. The scents are sweet, mocking the stench that clings to the air. You pick up a handful, let it sift through your fingers. Once, these were treasures worth killing for. Now they're just dust. Further on, you come upon a man sitting by the road, a mask shaped like a bird's beak covering his face. He wears a long dark coat, gloves, and carries a cane, a physician or at least what passes for one. The mask's hollow eyes turn toward you. "Don't come closer," he says. His voice is muffled, distant. The air's heavy today. He taps the end of his cane against the ground. "They say these herbs inside," he gestures to the beak, "keep the sickness out. I say they keep me sane." You ask if he's found any cure. He laughs, short and sharp. "Cure? No. But people pay for hope, and I give it to them as best I can." He gestures to a row of small bottles laid out beside him. "Vinegar, garlic oil, mercury. Take your pick." "You don't," he shrugs. "Wise choice. Hope's cheaper when it's imaginary." You thank him and move on. Behind you, the sound of his laughter fades into the wind. The days blend together after that fields of silence. Towns half empty, the world moving as if through honey. But amid the despair, there are glimmers of something else. You meet a group of nuns, tending to the sick in a barn, their faces pale but calm. They move with quiet efficiency, washing wounds, whispering prayers. One offers you water, her eyes kind but tired. "Not everyone dies," she says softly. "Enough live to keep the candles burning." Her words stay with you. You see it everywhere, in small ways. The baker's apprentice lighting the oven again, a mother teaching her child to plant seeds, a monk copying texts by candlelight. Humanity persists, stubbornly, beautifully. The plague may steal breath, but it never manages to take will. You camp one last night by the river. The air is cool again, the stars brighter. You think of all the lives you've crossed in this journey, the farmer, the blacksmith, the scribe, the priest, all of them part of a fragile web that somehow holds the world together. Maybe that's the real miracle of the Middle Ages. Not the castles or cathedrals, but the sheer audacity of ordinary people refusing to stop living. As the water laps softly against the bank, you close your eyes. The hum of insects, the whisper of trees, even the faint echo of the bell you heard days ago, they all blend into one sound, one heartbeat. The medieval world may have been brutal, but it was never silent. Even in its darkest hours, it kept breathing. And as you drift toward sleep, you realize that you, too, are part of that breath, one more witness to a time that refused to die quietly. You limp back toward the little camp you claimed at sunrise, boots caked in dust, body aching in ways that feel centuries old. The sun hangs low, a dull orange coin slipping behind the hills, and the air smells faintly of smoke and wet earth. Somewhere behind you, a rooster crows late, confused by the fading light. It feels right that even time seems a little disoriented, nor you've been wandering through a century that doesn't belong to you. Tonight, the village feels tired in the way only human places can, swept clean, yet still carrying the weight of what it's endured. You pass a few people repairing the roof of a tavern, the rhythmic thud of hammers steady as a heartbeat. No one speaks much. They just work until the dark folds around them, the silence between their breaths saying more than words could. You find a quiet corner near the edge of the fields and sit, the grass cold against your hands. A faint breeze moves through the stalks, carrying with it the smell of tilled soil and something sweeter, honey, maybe, or the faint promise of spring. Fireflies blink here and there like the first hesitant stars. It's almost easy to believe the worst is over. The stars that emerge tonight are sharp and white, unbothered by the smoke of forges or the torchlight of guards. You wonder how many eyes before yours have looked up and seen the same constellations, the shepherd, the knight, the widow. Maybe they too felt small and safe at once, reminded that even in centuries when the world burned, the sky never flinched. You stretch your legs, toes numb from the cold, and think about all you've seen since waking up in that straw bed days, or was it years, ago. You've walked through plague and poverty, through laughter that felt defiant and prayers that trembled on people's tongues. You've eaten bread so hard it could double as weaponry, dodged the smell of sewage with limited success, and learned that the human body was never designed for chainmail or drafty castles. You remember the barber surgeon's blood-stained hands, the market vendor who sold you onions like they were treasure, the monk who swore he saw God in the patterns of spilled ink. You remember the boy who dreamed of leaving his village to see the sea, the woman who buried her family and still managed to sing at dusk. All of them, ordinary and fragile, somehow surviving. Maybe that's the real miracle of medieval times, that anyone did at all. The fire you've built crackles softly, its smoke rising in lazy spirals. You hold your hands near it, palms open, watching the shadows shift across your fingers. You can feel the dirt beneath your nails, the roughness of your skin, the soreness deep in your shoulders. There's a strange comfort in it, the kind that comes from knowing your body has worked, endured, and kept you tethered to the world. In the distance, a church bell rings, once, twice. Its echo drifts across the valley like a sigh. It's not calling anyone this late, not for prayer or for danger. Maybe it just rings out of habit, as if even metal remembers what it was forged for. You smile a little at the thought. Your mind wanders to the people asleep behind shuttered windows, farmers, blacksmiths, children dreaming of dragons. You imagine their breathing, steady and soft, filling the night with life. It's strange to think that beneath all the mud and sickness and superstition, this world isn't so different from yours. People still love, still fear, still tell stories before bed. Historians still argue whether the Middle Ages were truly dark, but sitting here beneath this forgiving sky, you suspect they weren't. They were just human, messy, miraculous, alive. A moth flutters close to the firelight, its wings like folded parchment. You follow its movement, slow and erratic, until it drifts beyond the glow and vanishes into the dark. For a moment, the night feels infinite. Then a soft sound, someone laughing faintly, somewhere nearby, anchors you back to earth. You realize that even after everything, You don't want to leave this place just yet. For all its grime and danger, there's something grounding about it. Here, survival isn't taken for granted. Every meal, every sunrise, feels like a small victory. Maybe that's what modern life has forgotten, how fragile and astonishing it is just to make it through a day. You pull your cloak tighter and lie back, letting the grass cushion your head. The air hums with distant sounds, the rustle of trees, the soft clink of armor far off on patrol, a lone owl calling across the hills. Each noise feels like a thread connecting you to the centuries behind you. You can almost sense the rhythm of time itself, looping and folding, carrying the same heartbeat through every era. You think of the journey as one long breath, the inhalation of discovery, the gasp of discomfort, the exhale of understanding. You didn't last a day in the medieval world, not really. You stumbled, complained, flinched at the smell of everything, but you also listened, learned, and lingered long enough to see the beauty buried beneath the hardship. Your eyelids grow heavy, the fire settles into embers, glowing faintly red, like stars that have come to rest on the ground. The night deepens, and the cold creeps closer, gentle but persistent. You close your eyes and let the sounds blend together. The rivers whisper, the sigh of the wind, the faint crackle of burning wood. You realize that this quiet surrenders the truest connection to the people of the past. They ended their days just like this, under the same moon, with tired bodies and wandering thoughts. Half afraid of tomorrow, half grateful for it. History isn't just the story of kings and battles, it's the story of rest, tooth the soft, unrecorded hours when humanity simply breathed. And somewhere in that long silence between centuries, you find peace. The night has gentled now, folding itself around you like a blanket woven from sound and memory. The fire's last glow fades into the soil, and the air cools against your skin. Every breath comes slower, deeper, until even the ache in your muscles begins to melt away. You can still hear the river moving beyond the field, steady as a lullaby, whispering to you that everything that needed to happen has already happened. The stars shimmer faintly above, scattered like quiet promises. You feel them watching, patient and calm, their light touching your face as if to say you've done enough. The world that felt so harsh a few hours ago has softened, its edges blurred by sleep and forgiveness. Let your thoughts drift now past the noise, past the centuries, past the stories that kept you awake. Picture the horizon smoothing out, the hills flattening into calm waves of shadow. Somewhere, a door closes gently, and another opens into dreams. Your heartbeat slows, the scent of smoke fades into cool air. The past settles behind you, heavy but kind, while the present waits in silence. You don't have to move. You don't have to fix or remember anything. Just breathe. In a moment, the world will vanish behind your eyelids, leaving only warmth and the steady rhythm of your own pulse. The night will keep its quiet watch. The journey is done. You are home. Sleep now, traveler. You've seen enough. Sweet dreams.